Chapter 430. Although Leng Shiqi was now everyone's leader, there weren't many who truly believed in him. Especially those who were roped in by Dong Fengqi and Di Chuan. They definitely wouldn't listen to Leng Shiqi in secret. However, Leng Shiqi didn't care about this. The reason why he chose to fight for this position was to make it easier for him to do things. He couldn't be bothered to fight for power in this small group. At this moment, Delta Origi said leisurely, "Brother Lu's strength is truly shocking. But what do you plan to do next?" Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment. "Our target is Extreme Fire Manor. Before doing anything, we need to gather some information." Delta Origi revealed a thoughtful expression. "If we were to talk about the sects in Donglin County, it would be Donglin County's Dark Thunder Guards. Unfortunately, they aren't in our group." Leng Shiqi shook his head. "If we find Donglin County's Dark Thunder Guards, even if they're willing to give us information, we can't take it. This is equivalent to breaking the rules. Don't forget, there's another force that has gathered a large amount of information on Spirit Cultivator sections. They even gathered information on the entire Falling Star continent." Hearing this, some people reacted. Dong Fengqi clapped his hands. "Brother Lu is talking about Wind Whisper Tower." "That's right. Wind Whisper Tower was a very special force that was ranked in the world's sect rankings. The reason why Wind Whisper Tower was special was because those that could be ranked in the world's sect rankings were all extremely powerful forces. They were all called top forces or extraordinary forces. However, there weren't many experts in Wind Whisper Tower. They didn't even have a Sky Origin Realm expert. However, such a force could enter the world's sect rankings and be ranked as one of the 9 great sections. It was precisely because Wind Whisper Tower had an unimaginably huge information network. Speaking of information, the Dark Thunder Guards and Bloodrobe Pavilion in the Thunderblaze dynasty actually had an extremely tight information network. However, the Dark Thunder Guards' information was mainly focused on Spirit Cultivator sects and Imperial officials, while the Bloodrobe Pavilion focused more on assassination targets. Moreover, the coverage of these two forces' information network was basically limited to the Thunderblaze dynasty. As for Wind Whisper Tower, they had collected all kinds of information from the entire Starfall continent. As long as something happened in a certain place, there was almost nothing that Wind Whisper Tower did not know. Wind Whisper Tower's ability to gather information was publicly acknowledged to be the best in the Starfall continent. They were able to enter the World Sect ranking, because the World Sect ranking was created by them. Wind Whisper's Tower also had branches all over the continent, and they specialized in selling and collecting information. There was also a branch of Whistling Tower in Donglin County, and it was set up in Donglin City. There's no time to lose. Let's split into 2 groups. You guys pack your things first and gather at the Western Gate. I'll go to Wind Whisper Tower to buy information and gather at the City Gate." Leng Shiqi said. He didn't sound like he was giving an order, but a few people in the crowd frowned. Di Chuan in particular let out a light snort before turning around and walking away. Leng Shiqi did not care about him. He gave Delta Origi a look, asking her to help keep an eye on Di Chuan and Dong Fengqi while he prepared to go to Wind Whisper Tower. However, at this time, the people from the City Lord's mansion hurried over. One of them, who was dressed like a butler, said with a smile, "I wonder which lord is generous enough to pay for these floor tiles to be repaired." Di Chuan's figure, which had not gone far, suddenly paused. At this time, 2 people were sitting in a private room of Wind Whisper Tower in Donglin City. Leng Shiqi was one of them. As for the other person, he was a thin middle-aged man in shabby clothes. He was the supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards in Donglin County, Wu Diao. Wu Diao had the cultivation of the peak of the Spirit Aperture Realm. He was close to the complete realm of the Spirit Aperture Realm, which was 1 level higher than Di Chuan. He was the leader of the group that accepted the mission to destroy the Salt Clan. He was very well respected by the others with his high cultivation and deep understanding of Donglin County. Leng Shiqi could think of buying information from Wind Whisper Tower, so could Wu Diao. So they met here unexpectedly. In fact, it was not only them. After them, there was another young man with an imposing appearance. He was dressed in luxurious clothes and had a golden crown on his head. When he walked in and saw Leng Shiqi and Wu Diao, he immediately cupped his hands and smiled. Zhuge greets the two of you. You two came quite early. Zhuge, the commissioner of the Discipline Commission of Shantai County, was said to have broken through to the Spirit Pulse realm in his early 20s. Now he was only in his 30s and was already at the 9th level of the Spirit Aperture realm. He was known as one of the most dazzling geniuses in Shantai County. He was the leader of the elite group that destroyed the Great Righteousness sect. Zhuge had guessed who the leaders of the other two groups would be. He guessed Wu Diao, but Leng Shiqi's appearance here was completely out of his expectations. Originally, Zhuge thought it would be Dichuan. The three of them greeted each other, and an old man with a long beard walked in with a servant. This person was the shopkeeper of Wind Whisper Tower in Donglin City, shopkeeper Jing. After Leng Shiqi and Wu Diao came here to explain their intentions, he went to prepare the information. He must have brought it back by now. What surprised Leng Shiqi was that he saw 3 jade slips on the wooden tray that the servant was carrying. Shopkeeper Jing took the wooden tray and said, I already know why the 3 of you are here. These 3 pieces of information are what you want. But he did not finish his sentence, but Leng Shiqi and the others understood what he meant. Zhuge said with a smile, I cannot take Wind Whisper Tower's things for free. Please give me a price. Shopkeeper Jing raised a finger and said 4 words. 10,000 spirit stones. Zhuge smile immediately froze, and Wu Diao frowned deeply. 10,000 spirit stones. This was the entire fortune of an ordinary Spirit Aperture realm cultivator. It was not that they could not afford it, but after spending 10,000 spirit stones, they could not make ends meet. They really did not expect the information to be so expensive. It was a bit painful to pay for it, but they could not let the others share it equally. That would be too stingy, and how could they convince the others? As for Leng Shiqi, he was calmer. Although he was surprised by the high price of the information, since Wind Whisper Tower paid such a price, it must be worth it. Moreover, Wind Whisper Tower should know their identities, so they would not dare to ask for too much. Of course, the most important thing was that Leng Shiqi brought more than 30,000 spirit stones with him before coming to Donglin County. Therefore, he could be considered rich and overbearing. He was the first to nod and say, deal. Leng Shiqi took out 10,000 spirit stones without hesitation. Zhuge and Wu Diao could only grit their teeth and buy the information. Chapter 431. Leng Shiqi, Wu Diao, and Zhuge walked in different directions after leaving Wind Whispering Tower. Leng Shiqi didn't go straight to the west gate. Instead, he turned into a small alley and sank into the ground to take out the jade slip he just bought. What was recorded inside was the information regarding the Extreme Fire Manor. His eyes flashed with astonishment as he scanned the jade slip with his mental power. The words on the jade slip were densely packed. It actually recorded everything that had happened since the establishment of the Extreme Fire Manor, until now. This was simply the chronicles of Extreme Fire Manor. Perhaps even Extreme Fire Manor didn't have such detailed records. Wind Whispering Tower's information gathering ability was truly the best in the world. Leng Shiqi calmed down and carefully read the information, trying to find an opportunity. The first half of the information didn't have any practical value, and it was all from 100 years ago. However, there was one thing that caught Leng Shiqi's attention. According to the information, Extreme Fire Manor was built on top of an extinct volcano. Although this volcano was extinct, it still contained a large amount of earth fire energy. The disciples of Extreme Fire Manor could use the earth fire energy to cultivate, and it was truly half the work. However, the earth fire energy was abnormally violent and couldn't be cultivated for long periods of time. As a result, the cultivation speed of the disciples was limited. Therefore, Extreme Fire Manor thought of a way to suppress the violence of the earth fire energy by consuming the ice water from the Extreme Cold Spirit Pond. However, the Extreme Cold Spirit Pond wasn't unique to Extreme Fire Manor. It was located between Extreme Fire Manor and Bipolar Mountain Manor. Bipolar Mountain Manor was a second-rate faction, and it wasn't any weaker than Extreme Fire Manor. There were people from Bipolar Mountain Manor among the people who chased after Leng Shiqi in the illusory spirit realm. Bipolar Mountain Manor cultivated the ice and fire dual cultivation method, and they also needed the Extreme Cold Spirit Pond. Therefore, there were many conflicts between these two forces regarding the extreme cold spirit pool. However, they did not completely shed all pretense of cordiality and fight to the death. It was not that they didn't have such thoughts, but every time this happened, the Discipline Commission of Donglin County would come out to mediate for the sake of stability. Although Eastwood's Discipline Commission's presence was weak, it was still not something a second-rate sect could afford to offend. Thus, gradually, the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Village began to discuss having their young disciples compete every 3 years. The winner of 2 out of 3 matches would obtain the right to use the Extreme Frost Spirit Pool for 3 years. This rule had been maintained for several decades now. Both sides had their share of wins and losses. However, in the past few years, the Extreme Fire Manor had won both competitions. Coincidentally, a month later was the time for the two sides to compete again. Lung Shiqi's mind spun, and a plan faintly emerged in his mind. After that, he went to the West City Gate to meet up with everyone. Dong Fengqi immediately asked him about the information. Lung Shiqi vaguely said, "Although the Wind Listening Tower's information is detailed, we still need to rush to the vicinity of the Extreme Fire Manor to obtain some of the latest information before looking for an opportunity to make our move." He only gave a rough explanation, and didn't mention the Extreme Cold Spirit Pond in detail. Dong Fengqi and Di Chuan were both well aware of this, but Lung Shiqi was the leader on the surface after all. They couldn't question him directly, and could only rush to the Extreme Fire Manor together. Saining City was a city located 100 miles away from the Extreme Fire Manor. Disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Village would often appear here. After Lung Shiqi and the rest arrived, they spread out to gather information about the Extreme Fire Manor. Because the competition for the right to use the Extreme Cold Spirit Pond was imminent, many spirit cultivators treated this as a topic of conversation after meals. This allowed them to gather quite a bit of information. Very quickly, they felt that this might be a good opportunity for them to make their move. Bu Yangqiu suggested, "The Extreme Cold Spirit Pond is very important to the Extreme Fire Manor. Although the competition is said to be a competition between low-level disciples, some experts of the Extreme Fire Manor will definitely go. Why don't we take this opportunity to sneak into the Extreme Fire Manor and get rid of the experts of the 4 realms of celestial being first?" "No way." Di Chuan immediately disagreed. "Let's not talk about whether we can sneak into the Extreme Fire Manor smoothly with so many people. Besides, there are 3 experts of the Gang Spirit Realm in the Extreme Fire Manor. If we are accidentally detected by them, how many of us are confident to leave safely?" Dong Fengqi also felt that Bu Yangqiu's idea was a bit presumptuous. He said, "Why don't we intercept those who come to participate in the competition halfway, and then shift the blame to the Bipolar Mountain Village? Let them fight because of this, and then we can reap the benefits." His idea immediately gained the support of more than half of the people, but Lung Shiqi shook his head. A trace of dissatisfaction flashed across Dong Fengqi's eyes. "What's your opinion, Brother Lu?" Lung Shiqi glanced at Dong Fengqi. Dong Fengqi's little movement didn't escape Lung Shiqi's observation. How can it be so easy to shift the blame? What reason and motive does the Bipolar Mountain Village have to kill those people of the Extreme Fire Manor? Even though the Bipolar Mountain Village has lost twice in a row, they clearly know that they are evenly matched with the Extreme Fire Manor. It's impossible for them to rashly kill the disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor. This will only make the two sides fall out completely, which will do no good to anyone. And once we fail, the Extreme Fire Manor will be on high alert, and it will be very difficult for us to take action again. This time, Di Chuan suddenly stood on Lung Shiqi's side. "Brother Lu is right. We only have one chance to take action. We must succeed in one stroke." Dong Fengqi's idea was rejected by Lung Shiqi and Di Chuan one after another, which made him a bit embarrassed. However, Lung Shiqi changed the topic, saying, "Of course, Brother Dongfang's idea is right. Let the Bipolar Mountain Village and the Extreme Fire Manor fight." He gave Dong Fengqi a way out. Delta Origi stood out at this moment and said, "Brother Lu should already have a plan in mind. Why don't you tell us?" Lung Shiqi immediately raised 3 fingers and said, "The key to this matter lies in 3 people. They are Zhu Lin, Wan Xiaoyuan and Ji Yilan." Everyone had been inquiring about the Extreme Fire Manor today, so they knew that Zhu Lin was the only son of the extreme fire manners master. He was also the most outstanding disciple of the younger generation. He was already at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm at the age of 20, and he had also learned the extreme fire absolute sword from the extreme fire manner. He was quite famous within a radius of several hundred kilometers. As for Wan Xiaoyuan and Ji Yilan, they didn't know who they were. They also didn't understand why Leng Shiqi would mention these two unfamiliar names. At this moment, Lian Yi muttered, Ji Yilan from the Shining City's Ji family? I heard that Zhu Lin seems to be very fond of this Ji Yilan. Could it be that you want to take action from this? Leng Shiqi nodded and said, That's right, but it's not just Zhu Lin who likes Ji Yilan. The genius disciple of the bipolar mountain village, Wan Xiaoyuan, is also the same. Chapter 432. On this day, the extreme fire manor and the bipolar mountain village would compete for the right to use the extreme cold spirit pond again. They chose the White Long Valley between the two sides. Some disciples of the two sects gathered here, and some spirit cultivators who were watching the fun also came over. In the center of the White Long Valley, the people of the extreme fire manor and the bipolar mountain village had already arrived. However, the spirit astral realm experts from both sides didn't come, only sending a few spirit aperture realm elders to watch. Although the impact of this competition was great, it was still a competition between the younger generation. The young disciples of these second-rate sects were basically only at the spirit transformation realm. This level of competition wasn't a life and death battle. It was enough to have a few spirit aperture realm experts. The disciples of both sides were looking at each other with hatred. The two sects were too close, and they both needed the extreme cold spirit pond. In the past few decades, there had been many conflicts, and the accumulated hatred between the two sides was already very deep. However, the disciples of the extreme fire manor were more complacent, while the people of the bipolar mountain village were more resentful. The main reason was that the bipolar mountain village had already lost twice in a row in the competition for the extreme cold spirit pond. However, they were still very confident this time. The bipolar mountain village had also produced an extraordinary genius in the past 2 years, and that was Wan Xiaoyuan. In fact, this person had already reached the peak of the spirit transformation realm half a year ago. In terms of talent, he was definitely not weaker than the young master of the extreme fire manor, Zhu Lin. However, Wan Xiaoyuan had always been more low-key, so his reputation wasn't as resounding as Wan Xiaoyuan. Therefore, the disciples of the bipolar mountain village placed their hopes on Wan Xiaoyuan, hoping that he could reclaim the extreme cold spirit pond and wash away their shame. The spirit cultivators below were also discussing spiritedly. There were even people who didn't mind watching the fun and started gambling. Take a guess who will win this time? I heard that the extreme fire manor's Zhu Lin is not only at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm, but also cultivates the extreme fire sword technique. It seems that the extreme fire manor will definitely win this time. Someone retorted. That's not necessarily true. Perhaps you don't know that the bipolar mountain village's Wan Xiaoyuan is also at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm. He is even close to the limit of the spirit transformation realm, so it's not certain who will win. That's right. The bipolar stronghold's frost ice silk hands is also very strong. Especially when it's able to use softness to overcome hardness, it has a great advantage among those of the same level. Some people were discussing the strength of both sides, while others were gossiping in a low voice. Have you guys heard that the young master of the extreme fire manor, Zhu Lin, and the genius disciple of the bipolar mountain stronghold, Wan Xiaoyuan, are both in love with the eldest daughter of the Ji family, Ji Yilan? Hee. I've also heard that the two of them have clashed several times in secret. It is said that this time, the two of them are not only fighting for the extreme frost spirit pool, but also for the Ji family's eldest Mississippi. Tsk. This Ji clan really gave birth to a good daughter. That Ji clan was originally a small clan in Shining City that didn't have much of a reputation. There were only a few spirit pulse realm cultivators in the clan. But she just had to give birth to a daughter that made two geniuses infatuated with her. In the future, no matter who this Ji Yilan follows, the Ji family will definitely soar to the skies. These spirit cultivators liked to gossip when they had nothing better to do. Hearing this, everyone's body protection immediately shifted to the G family's eldest Mississippi. Coincidentally, at this time, a group of 10 people separated from the crowd and walked closer to the stage. It was the G family. Immediately someone muttered, "The G family really came. Look, that's the G family's eldest Miss, G Elan." Everyone's gaze quickly turned over, and saw a young girl around 18 or 19 years old gracefully walking over. She looked a little charming, very cute and enchanting. Although she could not be considered a peerless beauty, she was still a first-class beauty. She is indeed a beauty. No wonder she could attract the attention of two young elites, and even cause them to fight over her. In the crowd, there was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man who stood expressionlessly. He was Lung Shiqi after his disguise. Lung Shiqi also stared at Ji Elan. What he cared about was not Ji Elan's appearance, because he had already secretly looked for her last night. Ji Elan's cultivation was not high, only at the pure spirit realm. After Lung Shiqi infiltrated the Ji family, he immediately used an illusion to control her, and gave her a few instructions. It could be said that whether his plan could proceed smoothly or not depended on Ji Elan's performance today. He came today to see if the outcome would be as he expected. Lung Shiqi was not worried that Ji Elan would go against his wishes, because the lives of everyone in the Ji family were also tied to Ji Elan. Seeing Ji Elan appear, a simple-looking youth from the twin extreme mountain village immediately waved at her in high spirits. Ji Elan also quietly smiled at him, causing the youth to smile even more excitedly. This youth was Wan Xiaoyuan. At the same time, on the extreme volcano village's side, a youth wearing a fiery red robe and holding a sword revealed a disdainful smile. He was the young village lord Julin. A person beside Julin sneered and said, "Those idiots from the bipolar stronghold thought that they had the opportunity to obtain the extreme frost spirit pool. Little did they know that young Manor Lord had already opened up the spirit sea and reached the half-step spirit pulse realm. This time, whether it is the cold spirit pond or the young miss of the Ji family, they are all yours." "Humph, that one Xiaoyuan even dared to make a move against me a while ago. If it wasn't for father not allowing me to reveal my true strength, I would have already taught him a lesson. But this is also good. Today, I will properly teach him how to behave in front of everyone. I will also let him know who is qualified to obtain Elan, and who is the strongest genius in Saining City." The disciples of the extreme volcano village were all praising Julin. Not long after, the Spirit Aperture Realm experts from both sides went on stage to announce the official start of the competition. There were a total of 3 rounds, and the winner would win 2 out of 3 rounds. In the first and second rounds, both sides won 1 round each. Soon it was time for the most crucial third round. This time, it was Julin and Wan Xiaoyuan who went on stage. They were also the people who were entrusted with the greatest hope. The two of them glared at each other as soon as they went on stage. It was obvious that they had accumulated grievances for a long time. They didn't waste any time and directly started to fight. Wan Xiaoyuan waved his hands and used one of the ultimate techniques of the twin extreme mountain village, the frost ice silk hands. A large amount of spirit energy surged out like silk. Once entangled, it would become tighter and tighter. Moreover, there were also traces of cold air. It was a type of spirit technique that combined killing and trapping into one. However, Julin sneered. He unsheathed his long sword, and as the scarlet-red sword light scattered, a fiery aura immediately surrounded it. The violent sword chi slashed out and instantly shattered the spirit energy of Wan Xiaoyuan's frost ice silk hands, forcing him to retreat. Wan Xiaoyuan and everyone else were shocked. Half-step spirit pulse realm. Chapter 433. After Julin displayed his cultivation, no matter if it was the people from the twin extreme village or the surrounding cultivators, they were all shocked. The young master of the extreme fire village had been hiding his strength all along. This way, the result was already decided. Julin and Wan Xiaoyuan's spirit techniques were on par, but Julin's cultivation was higher than Wan Xiaoyuan's. This time, the twin extreme village was bound to lose. Everyone couldn't help but look at the twin extreme village with sympathy. If they lost again, they would have lost 3 times in a row. In other words, The extreme fire village had occupied the extreme cold spirit pool for nearly 10 years. 10 years was enough for them to nurture a new generation of young disciples. If this continued, the twin extreme village would probably be suppressed by the extreme fire village in the future. The leading spirit aperture realm elder of the extreme fire village also revealed a smile. A year ago, Nine Leaves swallowed a large amount of resources from their collection, causing the sect to be in a serious deficit. Some people had already started to have their own thoughts. After today's battle, not only could they continue to use the extreme cold spirit pool for 3 years after winning, they could also stabilize the people's hearts. No matter how one looked at it, it was a joyous occasion. On the stage, Zhu Lin sneered. Wan Xiaoyuan, don't forget what you said a few days ago. If you lose, stay away from Elan. She will be your sister-in-law in the future. Wan Xiaoyuan's temperament was originally rather simple. Furthermore, he devoted himself to cultivation all year round, so his shrewdness was rather shallow. Being ridiculed by Zhu Lin, he was so angry that his face turned red. He said angrily, "So what if your half-step spirit pulse realm? If you have the ability, let's have a life and death battle today." Ha ha ha. Zhu Lin laughed maniacally. "With just you? If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Wan Xiaoyuan took the initiative to attack. The frost ice silk hand shook out threads of icy qi. The power was soft and abnormally tough, penetrating the body with ice. Seeing this, Zhu Lin was happy because although this move looked powerful, in reality, Wan Xiaoyuan was already in a mess. His spirit technique was full of flaws. He slashed out with his spirit sword, and blazing sword qi surged out. When he attacked, he already had a trace of the demeanor of a spirit pulse realm expert. Wan Xiaoyuan was completely suppressed by Zhu Lin in the blink of an eye, and it didn't take long for him to show signs of defeat. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that Wan Xiaoyuan was bound to lose. The bipolar mountain stronghold was also bound to lose. However, an obscure killing intent flashed through Zhu Lin's eyes. The bipolar mountain manor had been at odds with their extreme fire manor for a very long time now. Moreover, not only did Wan Xiaoyuan compete with him for the cold pond, but he also competed with him for the woman. Murderous intent had already appeared in his heart. Although in the past, both sides would not kill each other in the arena battles, which would definitely become a situation where they would fight to the death, Wan Xiaoyuan had personally said that it would be a life and death battle between them. Since that was the case, then don't blame him for being cruel. When Wan Xiaoyuan's strength was exhausted, Zhu Lin's sword form suddenly changed, turning to stab at Wan Xiaoyuan's qi si. This time, the people of the bipolar village were really frightened. If this sword really pierced through, then Wan Xiaoyuan's qi si would be destroyed and he would become a cripple. Their bipolar mountain manor's most talented disciple of this generation would fall, and the bipolar mountain manor would fall into a predicament of lacking in manpower for the next few years. The bipolar mountain manor's spirit aperture realm elder coldly snorted. He pointed from afar, and a cold energy suddenly shot out, instantly shattering Zhu Lin's longsword. He said coldly, "Zhu Lin, what is the meaning of this?" Humph. At this moment, the extreme fire manor's elder also stood out. What is the meaning of this? Previously, these two had already agreed to a life and death battle. Since it's a life and death battle, naturally, life and death are up to fate. You rashly intervened and broke the rules. At this moment, Wan Xiaoyuan seemed to have lost all his strength as he said dejectedly, "Elderly, there's no need to say any more. I've lost. I've lost face for the sect." Hearing this, Zhu Lin laughed. "Haha, you let me win," the extreme fire manor's elder said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Elderly, I'm sorry. Our extreme fire manor will have to use this extreme cold spirit pond for another 3 years." Elderly and all the bipolar mountain manor's disciples had gloomy expressions. Not only did they lose the extreme cold spirit pond, but they had lost 3 times in a row. The bipolar mountain manor's face was completely lost. Wan Xiaoyuan looked at Zhu Lin's arrogant face and had an impulse in his heart. He said, "So what if you won? You don't know that Elan and I have already pledged our lives to each other. It's impossible for her to be with you." "What did you say? I don't believe it." Zhu Lin's expression changed. He simply walked to Ji Elan's side and asked, "Elan, he's lying, right?" Wan Xiaoyuan didn't say anything, but looked at Ji Yilan affectionately. Ji Yilan's face blossomed into a brilliant smile and said, "Why would I pledge my life to Wan Xiaoyuan? In my heart, Brother Zhu is the true genius. He's the one I can entrust my life to." Hearing this, Zhu Lin smiled complacently, while Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes were suddenly bloodshot, full of disbelief and despair. Unexpectedly, Ji Yilan didn't even look at him. Instead, she walked to Zhu Lin's side and made her position clear. Wan Xiaoyuan opened his mouth wide, as if he wanted to say something. Zhu Lin, however, burst into laughter. He held Ji Yilan in his arms in front of everyone and sneered. "Did you hear that? Yilan said that I'm the one who's destined for her. And you're just a defeated opponent. You'd better get lost in the future, and don't wander around in front of Yilan. Soon she'll be my wife." Ah! Ji Yilan was held in Zhu Lin's arms. There was a hint of struggle in the depths of her eyes, but she still gave up, because the person who broke into her room a few nights ago was too terrifying. She had to do things according to that person's request. Otherwise, hundreds of people in the Ji family would die. Seeing this scene, Wan Xiaoyuan was furious. He quickly rushed over and shouted, "Bastard! Let go of Yilan." The crowd immediately opened up a path for him, and looked at him with a look of watching a good show. Today's matter was really explosive. It was enough for them to gossip for a long time. Elderly of the bipolar mountain stronghold immediately reached out and grabbed him back, earnestly persuading him. "Xiaoyuan, a real man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife. When we go back, I'll ask the sect master to arrange a good marriage for you. It's definitely better than Ji Yilan." Wan Xiaoyuan didn't listen to a single word of these words. He stared at the complacent Zhu Lin, pushed Elderly away, and ran away. Elderly shook his head and didn't chase after him. Today's matter was really a big blow to Wan Xiaoyuan. It was good to let him calm down. As for the others, they also chatted with each other and left. The competition ended hastily. The corner of Leng Shiqi's mouth rose slightly. His plan could finally be carried out smoothly. Chapter 434. In a dense forest in the depths of Whitelong Valley, Wan Xiaoyuan's heart was filled with resentment and shame. Not only was he defeated by the person he hated the most in the arena, but his favorite woman was also snatched away. Zhu Lin even hugged Ji Yilan in public. This kind of blow made Wan Xiaoyuan, who had always been ignorant of worldly affairs, go crazy. What made him feel even more humiliated was that Ji Yilan had clearly promised him a few nights ago that she would be with him, but she actually changed her mind today. Wan Xiaoyuan didn't hate Ji Yilan. He only felt that Zhu Lin must have forced Ji Yilan behind her back. It must be. He hated it so much. He hated Zhu Lin for going too far, and hated his own incompetence even more. Wan Xiaoyuan roared like a madman, wildly pounding the trees and boulders around him with his fists. He didn't use any spiritual power, only the strength of his physical body. However, he didn't cultivate any body refining techniques, so it didn't take long for his hands to be badly mangled. However, he didn't seem to notice it and continued to vent there, as if these trees were Zhu Lin. What a joke. You can't beat others, so you came here to compete with Shermu. You're really useless. At this time, a disdainful voice with a hint of ridicule sounded. Who? Wan Xiaoyuan turned around abruptly and saw a middle-aged man in gray with an ordinary face standing there. He had never seen this person before. This person was naturally Leng Shiqi. He said indifferently, "You don't need to know who I am. I just want to ask you, do you hate Zhu Lin?" "Of course I do," Wan Xiaoyuan said hatefully. "Since you hate him so much, you need to cultivate diligently. One day, you will be stronger than him and defeat him with your own strength. Take back the glory that should belong to you and take back the woman that should belong to you. But what you're doing now, what does it mean to be a coward?" Leng Shiqi's tone was very flat, but there seemed to be some kind of strange rhythm in his words. Leng Shiqi used illusion techniques more naturally and freely. In his every gaze and every word, there was a trace of illusion technique mixed in. He wanted to subtly magnify the hatred in Wan Xiaoyuan's heart. Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes turned red from Leng Shiqi's words. His nails dug deep into his palms and even pierced his skin, causing blood to flow out. He didn't say a word, and his face revealed a look of struggle. In the end, he was dejected and disheartened. The other party was right. He was indeed a coward. He didn't have the confidence to defeat Zhu Lin, and he might not have a chance in the future. Zhu Lin had already refined his spirit sea before him. Perhaps in a few years' time, Zhu Lin would be able to break through the spiritual pulse realm and become an expert of the 4 levels of the sky-human realm. On the other hand, Wan Xiaoyuan had yet to even condense his spiritual sea. He would only be pulled further and further apart. What could he use to defeat Zhu Lin? Seeing him like this, Leng Shiqi said, "Am I right? But I still have the same question. Do you want revenge?" "Of course I do. I even dream about it," Wan Xiaoyuan roared. "But what's the use of dreaming about it? My cultivation is not as good as his. I can't defeat him." "Who said that you can't defeat him just because your cultivation is not as good as his?" Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "There are many battles in this world where the weak wins against the strong. As long as you have a powerful spiritual technique, you can completely defeat Zhu Lin. Such a spiritual technique has to be at least level 5 or above. The sect has it, but the elders definitely won't give it to me," Wan Xiaoyuan said dejectedly. Leng Shiqi's eyes locked onto Wan Xiaoyuan's and said, "If you really want to learn, I can teach you." As soon as he said this, Wan Xiaoyuan's body immediately paused, and he looked at Leng Shiqi warily. One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. Moreover, spiritual techniques were like cultivation techniques. They were all secrets of the sect, and ordinary people couldn't even find them. Now this stranger in front of him actually wanted to teach him a powerful spiritual technique? No matter how simple Wan Xiaoyuan was, he wasn't stupid. He asked warily, "Who exactly are you? What's your purpose in doing this?" "I'm just a passerby. When I saw you being humiliated like this, I just wanted to help you." At this point, Leng Shiqi's eyes faintly flashed with a 5-colored light. "You don't have to be so nervous. I'm everywhere and have no fixed residence. I'm only going to teach you a spiritual technique. I'm not asking you to be my disciple, nor do I need you to pay anything. Just take it that I want to form a good relationship with you. I'll still say the same thing. Do you want to take revenge and wash away your humiliation?" The 5-colored light in Leng Shiqi's eyes became even brighter. However, Wan Xiaoyuan seemed to be unaware of this. His expression became a little stiff. However, when he heard that he would avenge his humiliation, his eyes suddenly erupted with shocking hatred. Wan Xiaoyuan nodded deeply. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi laughed inwardly. Under the bewitchment of the illusion, Wan Xiaoyuan had finally taken the bait. Leng Shiqi crossed his arms and said, "The spiritual technique I'm going to teach you is actually somewhat related to your bipolar mountain village. Watch carefully." With that, Leng Shiqi's aura condensed and he displayed the power of the peak of the spirit transformation realm. Then he moved both of his hands, and suddenly, hundreds and thousands of threads of spiritual power with cold aura surged out. These threads of cold aura changed endlessly. Sometimes they were as indestructible as sharp spears, and sometimes they were as tough as willow branches. However, no matter what they looked like, the terrifying cold power contained within them froze all the surrounding trees and stones into ice. With a wave of his hand, Leng Shiqi turned the area within 100 feet into a cold hell. Wan Xiaoyuan was dumbfounded. Was this the destructive power of a spirit transformation realm cultivator? He could also see that the spiritual technique Leng Shiqi used was indeed similar to the extreme cold ice silk hands he cultivated. In front of this spiritual technique, the extreme cold ice silk hands was simply child's play. If he learned this spiritual technique, even if Zhu Lin was a half-step spirit vein realm cultivator, he was confident he could easily defeat him. After recovering from his shock, Wan Xiaoyuan immediately revealed a look of ecstasy. He clasped his hands and said, "Senior, are you really going to teach me this spiritual technique?" Leng Shiqi continued to maintain the illusion and his voice was filled with temptation. "Yes, I might as well tell you that my ancestor and your bipolar mountain village's ancestor have a lot of connections. My cold underworld thousand silk hands was born from the extreme cold ice silk hands, so you can't be considered stealing it. Moreover, you have the foundation of the extreme cold ice silk hands, so you will learn it very quickly." When Wan Xiaoyuan heard this, he suddenly realized that this senior was related to the sect. The last trace of vigilance in his heart finally dropped. However, you must not tell anyone else about me teaching you this spiritual technique, not even your elders. Can you do it? Wan Xiaoyuan immediately said. Please rest assured, senior, I won't tell anyone. Leng Shiqi waved his hand and said, Very good, I'll teach you the spiritual technique first. Go back and comprehend it. In the future, you can come here to find me every 2 days. Chapter 435. Wan Xiaoyuan nodded and was about to leave, but before he left, he suddenly remembered something. He turned around and asked, By the way, senior, I still don't know your name. A name is just a code name. It's fate that allowed me to teach you the cold underworld 1,000 thread hands. After this, I'm going to travel the world. You can just call me senior. Leng Shiqi said with a profound expression. Wan Xiaoyuan suddenly felt some admiration for Leng Shiqi. Thinking about how he was still wary of Leng Shiqi, he felt a little embarrassed. After a few simple laughs, he turned around and left. Leng Shiqi looked at Wan Xiaoyuan's departing figure and revealed a meaningful smile. He muttered, Dongfangqi and Delta Origi should be making their move now. In fact, before the competition between the extreme volcano village and the bipolar village, he had already divided this group of people into 3 groups. Dongfangqi and Dichuan each led about 10 people and hid near the 2 sections. As long as the competition ended and the result was what Leng Shiqi expected, they would spread the news of this battle. They would also praise the extreme volcano village and suppress the bipolar village, causing the conflict between the 2 sides to intensify. At this moment, in a small town near the extreme volcano village, Buyangqiu stood next to Dongfangqi and said, Brother Dongfang, will you really listen to Lu Xingji's arrangements? Dongfangqi's eyes flashed with a complicated expression. He said in a deep voice, Buyangqiu, put away your thoughts. Although Lu Xingji came out of nowhere and took my position as the leader, his status and strength are far above us. I'm convinced. Especially since he was able to find an almost undetectable flaw in the information to expose the relationship between the extreme volcano village and the bipolar village. And it's very likely that he will succeed. I don't want to offend someone like him. Don't forget that our mission isn't just to destroy the extreme volcano village. We have to show our value in the process. If you want to pretend to be obedient, you'll still be eliminated even if we destroy the extreme volcano village. Buyangqiu was a little embarrassed by Dongfangqi's words. However, at this time, another person hurriedly walked over. He didn't say anything and only gave a look. Dongfangqi and Buyangqiu knew that Leng Shiqi's plan had succeeded. Follow the plan. On the other side, near the bipolar stronghold, Dichuan was also waiting for news. Delta Origi and Lian Yi were also with him. It had to be said that Leng Shiqi was the most worried about Dichuan in this group, so he had Gu Sen keep an eye on him to prevent him from causing any trouble. In the bipolar mountain stronghold Master Xiao Jingwu immediately rushed over when he heard that Wan Xiaoyuan had returned. He was a little worried when he heard that Wan Xiaoyuan had left alone after being defeated. He wasn't worried about Wan Xiaoyuan's safety. After all, this place was near the bipolar mountain stronghold. Wan Xiaoyuan wasn't weak, so there shouldn't be any accidents. What Xiao Jingwu was most worried about was Wan Xiaoyuan's mentality. He was very fond of Wan Xiaoyuan as a disciple. Not only was his talent outstanding, but he also treated him as a father. This made Xiao Jingwu, who had no children in his life, treat him as his own son. Therefore, he did his best to nurture Wan Xiaoyuan. Unfortunately, Wan Xiaoyuan was good at everything, but his shrewdness was too shallow. On the stage, he almost lost his mind after being provoked by Zhu Lin. How could he take over the bipolar mountain stronghold in the future? After seeing Wan Xiaoyuan, Xiao Jingwu secretly sighed in relief. He comforted him. Xiaoyuan, master knows about the matter. It's fine if you lost. Before we didn't have the extreme cold spirit pond. Weren't we still a second-rate sect? As for that Ji Ilan, it's nothing. Master has specially found a few good women for you. In a few days, you can choose as you wish. You have to know that there are many women who want to be your wife. After receiving Leng Shiqi's support, Wan Xiaoyuan also gained some confidence in his heart. His mentality also changed a little. He smiled gently at Xiao Jingwu. He smiled at Xiao Jingwu and said, "I've troubled Master. Disciple only likes Ji Yilan, but Master can rest assured that one day, I will take back Yilan with my own strength." Wan Xiaoyuan's reaction made Xiao Jingwu slightly stunned at first. Then he laughed and said with relief, "Good Xiaoyuan, it seems that after experiencing a setback, you've grown up. Failure isn't terrible. Next time, we'll win it back. Master is very pleased that you have such thoughts." "Master, in fact, I came back this time to ask for leave. I want to go out and travel. First, I can relax, and second, I want to challenge geniuses from all over the world in order to improve my strength." Wan Xiaoyuan cupped his hands. Good. Xiaoyuan, go ahead. Master will go prepare some resources for you." Xiao Jingwu patted him on the shoulder and left in a good mood. Wan Xiaoyuan used the excuse of going out to travel as an excuse to go into the dense forest of Whitelong Valley, preparing to practice the 1,000 ice silk hands with Leng Shiqi. But on this day, just as he walked into the dense forest, he saw a familiar figure crying quietly. It was Ji Yilan. Seeing Ji Yilan, Wan Xiaoyuan's heart was immediately in a mess, and his face showed a complicated expression. When Ji Yilan heard the movement behind her, she turned around and saw Wan Xiaoyuan. She immediately smiled like a flower, and threw herself into Wan Xiaoyuan's arms with a wisp of fragrance. Wan Xiaoyuan was instantly stunned. His whole body became very stiff, and he didn't know where to put his hands. He subconsciously wanted to push Ji Yilan away, but with his beloved woman in his arms, he was very reluctant to do so. "Oh!" Ji Yilan cried like a pear blossom in the rain. When her cries reached Wan Xiaoyuan's ears, he was heartbroken. Ji Yilan raised her tear-stained face and pleaded, "Xiaoyuan, you must save me. It was Zhu Lin who forced me. He said that if I didn't obey him, he would destroy my Ji family. You will definitely help me. You will definitely save me, right?" Wan Xiaoyuan was so angry that his face turned red, and the veins on his face bulged. "Yilan, you were really forced. I knew you wouldn't let me down. Zhu Lin, you despicable and shameless person. I will kill you. I will definitely kill you." "What? Xiaoyuan, you can't do this. Zhu Lin is the young master of extreme fire manner. If you kill him, you will bring a great disaster. Besides, you can't beat him. You must not be impulsive," Ji Yilan said with concern, and then her expression became sad again. Ji Yilan's words not only didn't make Wan Xiaoyuan afraid, but also made him even angrier. Especially when he heard that even Ji Yilan thought that he couldn't beat Zhu Lin. He secretly vowed to kill Zhu Lin to prove to everyone. Chapter 436. In the following days, Wan Xiaoyuan followed Leng Shiqi to practice the cold underworld 1,000 silk hands. Leng Shiqi didn't lie. Wan Xiaoyuan had the foundation of the extreme cold underworld 1,000 silk hands, so he was able to learn it with half the effort. In just a few days, he had already reached the entry level. Wan Xiaoyuan's heart was filled with boundless hatred, so he cultivated day and night. Leng Shiqi estimated that he would reach the proficient level in a few days. The proficient level of the cold underworld 1,000 silk hands was enough to kill Zhu Lin. On this day, Leng Shiqi said, "Xiaoyuan, you've already cultivated the cold underworld 1,000 silk hands to the proficient level. Now, even if you fight Zhu Lin, as long as you perform normally, you can easily defeat him." Wan Xiaoyuan nodded confidently. He had been using the cold underworld 1,000 silk hands for the past few days, so he was very clear about the power of this spiritual technique. "When I go back, I'll send him a challenge. I want to defeat him and take back Yilan." At this time, Leng Shiqi showed a strange expression and said, "I'm afraid you can't take back Ji Yilan." "And, Senior, what do you mean?" Wan Xiaoyuan asked doubtfully. Leng Shiqi explained, "You've been cultivating here these past few days, so you haven't been in contact with the outside world. In fact, Zhu Lin had already given the Ji family betrothal gifts a few days ago. In terms of etiquette, Ji Yilan is already Zhu Lin's wife." "No." Wan Xiaoyuan's expression suddenly changed. "Yilan can't marry that bastard Zhu Lin. She's not willing, she's being forced. Moreover, who doesn't know that Zhu Lin is a playboy by nature? Who knows how many girls he has ruined? Yilan won't have a good ending if she marries him." Sigh. Leng Shiqi suddenly sighed and said, "But what's done is done." Wan Xiaoyuan immediately felt as if he was struck by lightning. He was stunned for a moment before roaring, "Impossible. They're not married yet. Besides, Ilan isn't that kind of person." Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "Who told you that you can't sleep together before marriage? Moreover, Ji Ilan was such a person. Their Ji family was just a small family. She, Ji Ilan, had no other strong points other than her good looks. She was choosing between you and Julin, but Julin defeated you in front of everyone. He is also very good at coaxing girls, so why would she choose you? Since she had already chosen Julin, she naturally had to quickly tie him up. The only method Ji Ilan could use was to use her own body to tie Julin up." No, I don't believe it." Wan Xiaoyuan felt as if the sky and earth were spinning. He muttered in a rough voice, But a few days ago, Ilan came to me for help saying that she was forced." Leng Shiqi said, "Obviously, that was her last test for you. She wanted to see if you would do anything. However, you've been cultivating here for the past few days. She didn't see you move, so she thought you gave up. So she threw herself into Julin's arms." Wan Xiaoyuan held his head with both hands and roared, "Ilan isn't that kind of person. She wouldn't lie to me. If you really don't believe it, I can take you to see it for yourself." Wan Xiaoyuan immediately paused. Then Leng Shiqi threw him a wide black cloak. "Put this on first. Don't let others recognize you. Also, if you hear anything, don't take it to heart." Wan Xiaoyuan took the cloak in confusion. He didn't understand what Leng Shiqi meant, but he still put on the cloak obediently. Then the two rushed to Shaining City. It was late at night, but as soon as they entered the city, Wan Xiaoyuan could hear people talking about him from everywhere in the streets and alleys. Everyone was talking about how unbearable and incompetent he was. Not only did he lose the arena and the extreme cold spirit pond, he even lost the woman he loved. He was really a piece of trash. Wan Xiaoyuan's hands were trembling. He didn't expect that in the eyes of outsiders, he was such a piece of trash. He was so angry that he almost couldn't control himself. However, Leng Shiqi held him down and brought him directly to a famous restaurant in Channing City. He even booked a private room for him. Before Wan Xiaoyuan could react, Leng Shiqi directly sealed the meridians in his body, making him unable to move. Leng Shiqi said softly, "I'm afraid that what you hear later will stimulate you, so I'll temporarily control you to prevent you from doing anything stupid." Wan Xiaoyuan couldn't even move his mouth. He could only use his eyes to show a puzzled look. Leng Shiqi drank wine by himself. According to his plan, Ji Ilan would soon bring Julin here. Sure enough, after about half an hour, the door next door was opened, and the laughter of a man and a woman could be vaguely heard. Leng Shiqi waved his hand, and a strange spiritual power spread out. The wall, which was originally good at soundproofing, immediately became useless, and the voices next door could be clearly heard. As soon as he heard the man's voice, Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes immediately widened. The owner of that voice was Julin. However, when he heard the other woman's voice, he suddenly became a little absent-minded, because the woman turned out to be Ji Ilan. In the middle of the night, Ji Ilan and Julin actually came to this private room together. Was there a need to guess what they were going to do? A burst of grief and indignation rushed to Wan Xiaoyuan's head, but he still had a trace of hope in his heart. He hoped that all of this was fake, that it was all a dream. But soon after, the sound of clothes rustling came from next door, and the two people's teasing laughter. "Hee hee, my little baby, you miss me so much. Back then, you wanted to follow that silly boy Wan Xiaoyuan. He's not as good as me. Annoying. Why do you mention that trash for no reason? He's just a toad. He's not even qualified to carry your shoes. Ha ha ha, of course. Come, let your husband love you." The words of these two people fell into Wan Xiaoyuan's ears word for word. At this moment, he was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot, and the veins all over his body were bulging. He was constantly gasping for breath, and his whole body was trembling. It was actually like this: they had already slept together. The woman he loved most betrayed him and had been using him. It turned out that in the eyes of Ji Ilan and Julin, he was just a laughable plaything. In his life, he had never wanted to kill a person so much. If Leng Shiqi hadn't restrained him, he would have rushed out directly. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi decided to add fuel to the fire. His eyes flashed with multicolored light, and a voice directly appeared in Wan Xiaoyuan's mind. Go kill Zhu Lin. Then he quietly withdrew his control over Wan Xiaoyuan, and Wan Xiaoyuan instantly smashed the wall in front of him. Chapter 437. The wall collapsed, giving Zhu Lin and Ji Yilan a fright. However, when Zhu Lin saw Wan Xiaoyuan walk in from outside the wall, he immediately revealed a smug and mocking smile. So it's you. I heard that after you lost in the arena last time, you went to cry. You're really useless. Now you actually dare to appear here. Why? Do you want to fight me, or do you want to see me having fun with Lan? At this point, Zhu Lin unscrupulously hugged Ji Yilan in his arms. Ji Yilan also revealed a charming smile, completely ignoring Wan Xiaoyuan's existence. However, Zhu Lin didn't expect that Wan Xiaoyuan would stretch out his hands with hatred. Immediately, dozens of cold nether threads surged out, and were about to strangle Zhu Lin. Tisk, it's still the same old trick. Zhu Lin still looked down on Wan Xiaoyuan, thinking that he was still using the extreme cold ice silk hands. However, as soon as he unsheathed his sword, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Wan Xiaoyuan's cold nether threads were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they surrounded Zhu Lin like a spider web. Furthermore, there were streams of cold air rushing over, causing Zhu Lin to feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Zhu Lin finally realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late for him to react. In a hurry, he could only stab out a few times in a row. Unfortunately, the extreme fire absolute sword he was so proud of was unable to do anything to the cold nether threads. Suddenly, those seemingly soft cold nether threads became like spears, instantly shattering Zhu Lin's sword and fiercely stabbing into his body. Zhu Lin was immediately bathed in blood. What made him even more terrified was that there were streams of netherworld energy invading his body and mercilessly devouring his vitality. At this moment, Zhu Lin looked at Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes that were filled with killing intent and hatred. He finally began to regret it. Although he didn't know why Wan Xiaoyuan had suddenly become so strong, he knew that if he didn't escape, he would die here. With great difficulty, Zhu Lin took out the crimson bead from his mustard seed bag. Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. With a move of his arms, the cold nether threads became soft and boneless again, binding Zhu Lin and making him unable to move. This time, Zhu Lin was truly in despair. The cold nether threads were getting tighter and tighter, and the netherworld chi was constantly invading. He could only exclaim, Wan Xiaoyuan, are you crazy? You dare to kill me? Do you know the consequences of killing me? The extreme fire manor would definitely fight to the death with the bipolar village. You are harming yourself, harming the bipolar mountain village. However, Wan Xiaoyuan acted as if he didn't hear Zhu Lin's words. His spiritual power surged as dozens of cold underworld threads squeezed Zhu Lin's body, causing blood to seep out. Wan Xiaoyuan smiled ferociously when he saw the blood. Die, Puchi. Zhu Lin was instantly killed by the cold underworld threads. Blood flew everywhere, and he no longer looked like a human. The blood-red color in Wan Xiaoyuan's eyes began to fade slowly. His body swayed and was about to fall down. At this moment, he saw Ji Yilan with a frightened expression. Ji Yilan immediately cried out, Xiaoyuan, don't kill me. Don't kill me. I was forced. Forced. Wan Xiaoyuan smiled bitterly and didn't look at her again. He was about to leave this place in a daze. Now that Zhu Lin was dead and his great hatred had been avenged, he didn't feel the slightest bit of joy in his heart. However, Leng Shiqi suddenly rushed over. He grabbed Wan Xiaoyuan's shoulder and said angrily, How can you be so foolish? I taught you the spiritual technique, so that you can defeat Zhu Lin, not kill him. Do you know how much disaster you have brought to the bipolar village? Wan Xiaoyuan and Zhu Lin didn't fight for long, but the commotion was not small. At this moment, many people had already gathered their heads to look over. At this moment, Wan Xiaoyuan also regained some rationality. He panicked and asked, Senior, what should we do now? What should we do? Of course we have to escape. There are many disciples of the extreme fire manor in this city. Let's escape before they know about this. Upon hearing Leng Shiqi's words, Wan Xiaoyuan finally reacted and hurriedly rushed out of the door. But just as he was about to escape, he turned around and asked, "Senior, what about you?" Leng Shiqi said softly, "I have my own way to escape, but I don't want to be involved in such a big mistake. From now on, our fate is over. We won't meet again." Wan Xiaoyuan's figure paused, but he also knew that he had made a big mistake. He didn't want to involve Leng Shiqi, so he immediately escaped. After he left, Leng Shiqi turned to look at Ji Yilan. At this time, the grievance on Ji Yilan's face was gone. She said with a bit of fear, "I've done what you asked me to do. You should also fulfill your promise." "Don't worry, the people of the Ji family won't be in danger. On the contrary, they will get some precious resources, but..." Leng Shiqi looked at Ji Yilan with murderous intent. Ji Yilan said in horror, What do you want to do?" After a few breaths, Ji Yilan became a corpse, and the way she died was no different from Zhu Lin's. Leng Shiqi then quietly left. At the same time, the people who were watching the show also came over. As soon as they came in, they saw two tragic corpses on the ground. From the appearance, it was impossible to recognize who they were. But these people still recognized the scattered swords and clothes. The two corpses were actually the young master of the Extreme Fire Manor, Zhu Lin, and his fiancée, Ji Yilan. They then thought of Wan Xiaoyuan, who had just fled in panic, and a shocking thought appeared in everyone's mind. It was Wan Xiaoyuan who killed Zhu Lin and Ji Yilan. It was not a big deal for him to kill Ji Yilan. After all, the Ji family was only a small family. But Zhu Lin was different. The Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold had decades of enmity. Now that Wan Xiaoyuan had killed Zhu Lin, it was very likely that the two sides would fight to the death. Everyone present knew that the vicinity of Shining City would not be peaceful in the near future. At this time, the news of Wan Xiaoyuan killing Zhu Lin had spread throughout the entire Shining City in just a few minutes, as if it had grown wings under the influence of some people with ulterior motives. There were many disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold in the city. When they heard the news, they immediately took action. The people of the Extreme Fire Manor naturally chased after Wan Xiaoyuan, while the people of the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold had to protect Wan Xiaoyuan. Battle after battle broke out in the middle of the night. At first, the battle only revolved around Wan Xiaoyuan, but it was inevitable that there would be casualties in a battle. In addition, both sides had long disliked each other, so it gradually evolved into a chaotic battle between a large number of disciples. In a dilapidated house in Shining City, there were about 20 people standing. When they heard the fighting outside, one of them said, "Brother Lu's plan has succeeded. Next it's our turn." Chapter 438. In Jihuo Manor, the owner of the manor, Zhu Horong, was playing chess with First Elder He. Beside them, a man was standing with his hands behind his back. They were the top 3 masters of Jihuo Manor, all of whom were masters of Gang Spirit Realm. More than a year ago, there were only 2 masters of Gang Spirit Realm in Jihuo Manor. At that time, Jihuo Manor had swallowed most of the resources, but one of them, who was at the peak of Spirit Aperture Realm, had some inspiration in the battle with Jihuo Manor, and broke through to Gang Spirit Realm. This made Jihuo Manor a blessing in disguise. A master of Gang Spirit Realm was far more precious than those resources. But at this moment, a man ran in hurriedly from outside. Zhu Horong frowned. He had a bad temper. The reason why he played chess with others was to relieve his bad temper. Seeing the man come in, he knew that the man must have something urgent. He said unhappily, "What's the hurry? Tell me slowly." Manor master. Young Heights Lord he. Zhu Horong saw the man stuttering and had an ominous premonition. He picked him up instantly and asked, "What happened to the Young Heights Lord?" "Young Heights Lord, he is dead. He was killed by Wan Xiaoyuan." Boom. It was as if a bolt from the blue had struck Zhu Horong's head, making him feel dizzy. Impossible. Zhu Horong roared to the sky. His son was dead? He had a son at an old age, and Zhu Lin was a rare genius. He was waiting to hand over Jihuo Manor to Zhu Lin in the future. But now his son was dead. Zhu Horong emitted visible flames all over his body, burning the air around him and twisting it. The first elder next to him was much calmer. He asked hurriedly, "What the hell is going on? Tell me." The messenger said hurriedly, "Young Heights Lord was killed by Wan Xiaoyuan in a restaurant in Saining City. Many people saw it at that time. Later, the brothers in the city all went to kill Wan Xiaoyuan after knowing it, but the people of Bipolar Mountain Village also came to stop them. Now there have been more than a dozen battles in Saining City, and dozens of brothers have died in the hands of Bipolar Mountain Village. Manor Lord, you must avenge the young Manor Lord, and avenge our fellow disciples." Zhu Huarong was already furious. He roared, "Lead all the experts in the manor to Saining City. I want to kill Wan Xiaoyuan with my own hands." However, He Ho stopped him. "Manor Lord, please calm down. This matter is strange. Wan Xiaoyuan's strength is obvious to all. How could he possibly kill the young Manor Lord with his strength? There must be something fishy going on here. Perhaps this is a plot against you, Manor Lord." "So what?" Zhu Huarong didn't listen to He Ho at all. He said, "Should I just sit back and watch if Luan dies? He is my son, my only son. Even if there is a conspiracy, I am not afraid." He Ho was even more worried about letting Zhu Huarong take the risk, so he advised earnestly, "Manor Lord, please calm down. As the Manor Lord, if anything happens to you, then our extreme fire manor will definitely fall into a bottomless abyss. How about this? Let Jiwen take some experts to capture Wan Xiaoyuan. As long as we capture Wan Xiaoyuan, we can use him to threaten the bipolar stronghold. At the same time, we can also test if there is anything fishy. If there is nothing fishy, it will not be too late for you to do it yourself." Zhu Huarong's face was gloomy, and he was like a volcano that could erupt at any time. He couldn't wait to kill Wan Xiaoyuan right now, but as He Ho said, he was the head of a sect and couldn't be impulsive. He panted and hesitated for a while, but still nodded heavily. He Ho said to the man who had been standing beside him, "Jiwen, immediately take 30 disciples in the 4 realms of celestial being to capture Wan Xiaoyuan alive." Yes. Jiwen was a new expert in the gang spirit realm of the extreme fire manor. He immediately went out with the messenger. He asked, "Where is Wan Xiaoyuan now?" "Near the White Long Valley." On the other side of the bipolar stronghold, Xiao Jingwu, the head of the bipolar stronghold, also got the news that Wan Xiaoyuan killed Zhu Luan. His first reaction was that it was impossible. Others didn't know Wan Xiaoyuan's ability, but he, as his master, knew it best. He was the first one who didn't believe that Wan Xiaoyuan could kill Zhu Luan head-on. But the fact was in front of him. Wan Xiaoyuan really did it. Xiao Jingwu couldn't help but remember that Wan Xiaoyuan had said a few days ago that he would take back his glory sooner or later. Alas, what has Xiaoyuan experienced these days? How did he kill Zhu Luan? How dare he kill Zhu Luan? The extreme fire manor had lost many disciples in the spiritual pulse realm in the phantom spirit secret realm, and many resources had been stolen by an evil beast. It was reasonable to say that the extreme fire manor should be declining slowly. However, the extreme fire manor had G1, a master in the gang spirit realm, which was completely different. No matter how many resources and disciples in the spiritual pulse realm there were, they were far less than a master in the gang spirit realm. Now the extreme fire manor had one more master in the gang spirit realm than the bipolar stronghold, and Wan Xiaoyuan had killed Zhu Luan. Zhu Huarong would definitely not let it go. Once the extreme fire manor came, what should he do? Xiao Jingwu was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, thinking hard about the solution. At this time, the deputy chief of the bipolar stronghold, Hao Yushan, who was in the gang spirit realm, said, "Don't worry, chief. According to the intelligence, Xiaoyuan is not dead yet, nor has he fallen into the hands of the extreme fire manor. And I think Xiaoyuan is likely to be used by someone. Although he doesn't have the ability to kill Zhu Luan, it is possible that someone secretly set him up. The urgent matter now is to take Xiaoyuan back and figure out the ins and outs of the matter." "You are right. Xiaoyuan is near the White Long Valley. I'll take someone to pick him up." Xiao Jingwu was about to leave. "No, chief, you can't go." Hao Yushan continued. "If you show up, Zhu Huarong will also show up. By then, this matter will be completely blown out of proportion. It's better to send more disciples in the spiritual aperture realm and the spiritual pulse realm to pick up Xiaoyuan." "Okay, But you must send more elites to ensure Xiaoyuan's safety. Both the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Stronghold took big actions, and sent their masters to the White Long Valley. However, the more than 20 masters in the 4 realms of celestial beings sent by the Bipolar Stronghold were intercepted halfway. There were only a dozen people who intercepted them. These people were all masked and dressed in black, and they were all masters in the spiritual aperture realm. At the same time, Jiwen of the Extreme Fire Manor was rushing with a group of disciples. Suddenly he stopped abruptly. The disciple behind him asked, "Elder Ji, what's wrong?" Jiwen's eyes flashed with cold light, and he said in a cold voice, "Come out. What kind of hero are you hiding?" Swish, swish, swish. As soon as his voice fell, a dozen black shadows appeared in all directions. One of them chuckled and said, "Elder Ji is really a master in the gang spirit realm. You were discovered so quickly." This man was Leng Shiqi. Chapter 439. It was Leng Shiqi who had brought half of the masters of the elite club to kill the people of Extreme Fire Village. Except for Lian Yi. These people were all in the Spirit Aperture realm. There were more than 20 people in Extreme Fire Village, including 5 in the Spirit Aperture realm, a dozen in the Spirit Pulse realm, and Jiwen in the Spirit Gang realm. Without Jiwen, Leng Shiqi's side could completely crush Jihuo Village. But this master of Gang Spirit realm was like an unshakable mountain. Jiwen looked at Leng Shiqi and others, and was secretly surprised. When did so many Spirit Aperture realm masters appear near Saining City? It seems that the first elder is right. There is indeed a mastermind behind Zhu Lin's death. However, for him, these Spirit Aperture realm masters were nothing. He said coldly, "Who are you? Do you know what will happen to you if you stop me?" Leng Shiqi ignored Jiwen. He waved his hand, and the dozen people behind him immediately rushed out. Although they were fewer in number, their strength was far superior to the people of Extreme Fire Village. Jiwen was stopped by Leng Shiqi. Jiwen thought that Leng Shiqi was also a spirit cultivator in the Spirit Gang realm, but he found that Leng Shiqi was only in the middle stage of the Spirit Aperture realm. He couldn't help laughing. "What? Do you want to stop me or do you want to die?" Leng Shiqi didn't answer. He directly pulled out the inky jade sword, and a ferocious bloody light suddenly burst out from the dark blade. A blood-colored sword light slashed out like a waterfall. Jiwen snorted coldly. Using his palm as a blade, he slashed out. In an instant, a crimson flame spiritual highland exploded. A dense flame burned the night sky, and directly tore apart Leng Shiqi's blood-colored sword light. "If you only have this bit of ability, then please go to hell," Jiwen said with a cold smile. Leng Shiqi carefully sensed the spiritual fluctuation of Jiwen's attack just now. He could feel that Jiwen could easily break the bloody sword light without using his full strength. It could be seen that Gang's spirit realm was really powerful. However, since Leng Shiqi dared to stop Jiwen alone, he naturally had the confidence to do so. With a thought, a fist-sized 5-colored goo worm flew out. This was the Goo King that Leng Shiqi had been cultivating for a long time. Through his continuous feeding of experience pills and various rare resources, the Goo King had now evolved into a rank 4 monster beast. Furthermore, it also possessed various strange abilities. Then, Goo King released a 5-colored light that shrouded Leng Shiqi. In an instant, a set of 7-colored scale armor appeared on his body. The aura of Leng Shiqi's spiritual energy suddenly increased to the late stage of the Spirit Aperture realm. This was one of the Goo King's abilities after advancing to stage 4, armor transformation. The Goo King's transformation into armor not only allowed Leng Shiqi's spiritual energy to soar, but also allowed Leng Shiqi to use part of the Goo King's abilities. Leng Shiqi waved his sword again. The blood in his body boiled wildly, and the evil blood chi filled the sky. A sword light that was several times more powerful than before swept toward Jiwen. This time, Jiwen's expression was a little dignified. He held a short knife in his hand, and the red flame on it had almost condensed into a substance. Immediately, a huge flame knife surged out. The majestic and scorching aura made the other people who were fighting tremble and quickly retreat. Leng Shiqi, who was facing the flame knife, stretched out his left hand at this time, and mysterious green light sprinkled out. After these green lights met the flame knife, They constantly swallowed and melted the power in it. In an instant, the huge flame knife dissipated by more than half. The blood-colored sword light and the flame knife intertwined. Blood chi and flames exploded, and violent spiritual energy spread out, overturning the ground within a radius of dozens of feet. Ji Wen's face immediately showed a bit of surprise. What method did the other party use to greatly weaken his flaming blade? Leng Shiqi used another ability of the Gu King, Devouring Soul. This was very similar to Princess Carol's Devouring Soul Gu, but the Gu King's ability was much stronger than the Devouring Soul Gu. After all, once the Devouring Soul Gu devoured too much spiritual energy, it would explode and die, but the Gu King wouldn't. Instead, it could devour a part of the spiritual energy for its own use. Taking advantage of this moment of surprise, a blood-colored jade mark appeared on Leng Shiqi's forehead. His face suddenly became a little pale, but the aura on his body was close to the peak of the spirit aperture realm. This wasn't the end. A terrifying evil blood chi surged out of his body and attached to the 7-colored scale armor and the black jade sword. It was the evil resisting art. At this moment, Leng Shiqi used all the enhancement methods he could accept for the magical beast blood pattern armor. The reason why he didn't use the magical beast blood pattern armor was that Lian Yi was here. He once wore the magical beast blood pattern armor in front of Lian Yi and pretended to be a demon spirit. In order not to be recognized, he couldn't use it at this time. Leng Shiqi's sword style changed, and hundreds of 3-ju sword chi sprayed out like a torrential rain, crisscrossing and covering the night. Ji Wen didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. His blazing blade aura rolled back and slashed out, and the blade light of more than 10 feet fell down. Immediately, pieces of blade aura burst up, shattering the 3-ju sword chi one after another. Leng Shiqi's series of changes immediately attracted everyone's attention, and the people on his side were surprised and happy. Before coming here, Leng Shiqi said that if there were masters of the spirit aperture realm, he would hold them back. At that time, no one believed him at all, and thought he was bragging. However, Leng Shiqi had fought with cultivators of the spirit aperture realm twice in a row, and he was not injured. Especially at this moment, he showed a strong foundation of strength. It seemed that he could really fight with cultivators of the spirit aperture realm. On the other hand, the disciples of the extreme fire manor were in despair. They were defeated by Dongfeng Qi, Bu Yangqiu and the others in one blow. They had only fought for a short while, but they had already lost 3 or 4 people. Their biggest hope was Ji Wen. As long as Ji Wen could kill Leng Shiqi and free his hands, they had nothing to be afraid of. But now it seemed that Ji Wen couldn't kill Leng Shiqi in a short time, so what awaited these disciples of the extreme fire village was only death. In fact, Ji Wen was the most shocked. So far he had fought with Leng Shiqi 3 times, but Leng Shiqi's 3 moves were stronger than the previous one, and they were several times stronger. Leng Shiqi was so powerful that Ji Wen had to face this battle with the eyes of the same level. Ji Wen clenched the hilt of his saber, and the blazing blade aura, which was as red as blood, flickered with a bit of black gold, which looked a little strange. Unconsciously, even the temperature in the surrounding air became abnormally dry. He moved his body, and in an instant, the fire soared into the sky and tore the night sky. The surrounding area was filled with dazzling flames. The dozens of people fighting on the other side didn't even care about their opponents and hurriedly retreated. But Leng Shiqi stood still. Chapter 440. Facing the monstrous blazing spirit gang that swept towards him, Leng Shiqi formed a seal with both hands, and a palm print of several feet in size appeared. There was 1 yin and 1 yang in the palm print, the extreme yang through the heavens, and the extreme yin through the underworld. Extreme yang underworld palm print. These 2 completely opposite forces actually perfectly fused together in Leng Shiqi's hands. Not only were the 2 forces fusing, but they were also destroying the other forces around them. Ji Wen's terrifying blazing spirit gang instantly began to distort. If those blazing blade auras were like the surface of a lake, then Leng Shiqi's extreme yang underworld palm print was like a large stone smashed into the lake, stirring up the entire surface of the lake. When all the blazing blade auras dissipated, Leng Shiqi only took a few steps back. Ji Wen's expression sank, and he waved his blade again. Like a hidden dragon soaring into the sky, The blade light was resplendent. The demonic aura around Leng Shiqi continued to rise, and the surging demonic aura could be seen clearly in the dark night. There seemed to be a demonic dragon churning in the demonic aura, and a pair of ferocious demonic dragon claws reached down and grabbed the resplendent blade light. Demonic dragon claw. After Leng Shiqi cultivated the imperial fiend art, the power of this move became stronger, and it could be ranked among the top of all his unique skills. One demonic dragon claw was destroyed by the blade light in 2 or 3 breaths, but the second demonic dragon claw finally blocked the blade. Ji Wen's 2 consecutive moves were blocked by Leng Shiqi, and he was not injured at all. He even seemed to be at ease, which made Ji Wen shocked, angry, and hateful. But this time, Leng Shiqi made the first move. He stretched out his 10 fingers, and 10 streaks of blood like thunder flashed past in the blink of an eye. Thunder exploded, and blood flashed. Each streak of blood was the thunder blood heavenly finger. Ji Wen was about to wave his blade, but at this moment he was surprised to find that a muddy swamp had appeared under his feet. This strange swamp was covered with cobwebs, and the threads were intertwined, making him a little scared. Ji Wen snorted coldly, and his spiritual highland erupted. In the blink of an eye, the spider-web swamp was blown away. But at the same time, the 10 thunderclap blood heavenly fingers had already shot in front of him. He took a step forward, and flames surrounded his body. It was as if the god of fire had descended. The surrounding ground was incinerated, turning into scorched earth. Those raging flames condensed into pillars of fire, colliding with the thunderclap blood heavenly finger. The bloodline collided with the raging flames, causing a thunderous explosion in the night sky. Countless pieces of gravel flew everywhere, but they were all crushed into fine powder by the powerful force. When all the light dissipated, Ji Wen's eyes narrowed slightly because he did not see Leng Shiqi's figure. Ji Wen held his breath. Leng Shiqi's trickiness had completely exceeded his understanding. At this time, a sense of danger appeared in his heart. He suddenly sensed a wave of spirit power coming from the sky. He quickly looked up and saw Leng Shiqi, who was covered in a variety of spirit lights, floating in the air. On Leng Shiqi's back, there was a pair of 5-colored wings that were more than 10 feet long. This pair of wings was the flying ability that the Goo King evolved after devouring the soaring sky goo. Leng Shiqi looked down from above, and layers of formations of different colors and shapes appeared behind him. Looking carefully, there were exactly 5 different formations superimposed together, and bursts of heart-palpitating spirit power were emitted. Ji Wen's brows furrowed deeply. Leng Shiqi was actually a spirit caster. It was not that he had never fought with a spirit caster before. He also knew that if he wanted to defeat a spirit caster, he had to fight in close combat before the other party released a powerful spirit skill. But Leng Shiqi was floating high in the sky at this moment, making him a little helpless. Although Ji Wen also had many long-range methods, he was still lacking compared to a spirit caster, and it would consume a lot of his spirit power. So Ji Wen decided to defend and wait for an attack. Leng Shiqi stood in the air like a god. The wings behind him stretched out, and the formation flashed. He waved his hands, and the formation behind him continued to rotate. The 5 formations immediately shot out streams of light of different colors. Those streams of light were like a brilliant meteor shower. The streams of light of different colors contained different powers, and the most powerful of them were the streams of light of red and blue. The streams of light of red and blue contained both the power of red flames and frost. This move was originally the spirit skill rotating light stream formation that came with the 5-god flowing light secret art. Later, Leng Shiqi integrated the fire and ice tornado into it, and it became the current rotating fire and ice stream formation. The streams of light fell from the sky, and Ji Wen was instantly drowned in it. But Ji Wen's expression calmed down again. He held the long sword horizontally in front of him, and a shocking sword intent filled the air. Under the guidance of the aura, the countless streams of light that fell 10 feet away from him were annihilated into nothingness. Of course, Leng Shiqi didn't expect the rotating fire and ice stream formation to suppress Ji Wen, but the most powerful part of this move wasn't its explosive power, but its ability to continue. As long as you had enough spirit power, you could maintain the rotating fire and ice stream formation. So this dazzling meteor shower didn't stop, which shocked Ji Wen. Originally, He thought that Leng Shiqi's cultivation was only at the spirit aperture realm. Even if his cultivation was increased, his essence wouldn't change, and it couldn't be maintained for a long time. But as time gradually passed, Jiwen found that Leng Shiqi's aura was still very stable, and there were no signs of excessive spirit power consumption. However, Jiwen himself couldn't hold on any longer. Although he didn't use a lot of spirit power, and only used his own sword intent to defend against the enemy, this consumed a lot of his mind. If this continued, although he wouldn't be injured, his combat power would seriously decrease. He couldn't be so passive anymore. Jiwen waved his sword, and the red flames on his body flowed. There was no killing intent in his sword momentum, but it carried a powerful sword intent that could destroy the world. This was the strongest sword move he had comprehended since he advanced to the spirit aperture realm. But this move also consumed a lot of spirit power, and he didn't want to use it casually. Even he didn't expect that this move would be used on a person at the spirit aperture realm. Jiwen was also very confident that this move was enough to break all the formations, and could also seriously injure Leng Shiqi. Sure enough, things were as he expected. This move was like cutting tofu, easily breaking the streams of light and the 5 formations, including Leng Shiqi. Seeing this scene, Jiwen first smiled slightly, but the smile on his face immediately froze. This was because the formation in the sky and Leng Shiqi's figure had dissipated like illusions, turning into multicolored glazed flowers that floated down. Confusion appeared in Jiwen's eyes in an instant. At this moment, the flowers in the air suddenly bloomed, and countless petals drifted away. However, every single petal contained a strand of Tridemi's sword chi. Chapter 441. Thousands of Sanju sword chi scattered down, forming a boundless sword prison. There were real and fake sword chi in these sword chi. Like a dream, it was impossible to guard against. When the sword chi approached him, Jiwen suddenly bit the tip of his tongue to wake up. Then there was a hint of horror in his eyes. He had just seen the power of Sanju sword chi, but now there were thousands of sword chi. As far as he knew, even a sword cultivator of Spirit Gang realm might not be able to wave so many sword chi in an instant. How could this not shock him? In the face of this dense sword chi, Jiwen was about to make a move, but at this time he found that hundreds of Leng Shiqi had appeared strangely around him. These Leng Shiqi slashed out ferocious bloody sword light one after another, forming a sword net that trapped Jiwen in it. The sword chi in the sky and the scarlet sword net on the side made Jiwen a little bit unprepared. If he was still a little shocked just now, then at this moment he could only say that he was in disbelief. It was hard for him to imagine that this was a sword skill that a spirit cultivator of Spirit Aperture Realm could display. Jiwen's face was fierce, and the long saber in his hand roared angrily, setting off layers of blazing saber aura that shattered the sword chi and sword light. He actually wanted to break the skill with force. However, the Leng Shiqi's chaotic flowers' gradually dazzling eyes was too strong, and the sword chi and sword light were overflowing, mixed with illusions. Under the cover of this sword prison, the long saber in Jiwen's hand actually had cracks. His spirit saber was also a 6th-level spirit weapon, but the Leng Shiqi's inky jade sword was even sharper. Under the storm-like attack, it seemed to be about to shatter Jiwen's weapon. Jiwen suddenly roared angrily. Crimson flames surged around his body. The raging flames continuously condensed into several crimson runes that were imprinted on his body. Then Jiwen's whole body emitted red light, and even his eyes shot out 2 5-foot-long flames. He used his palm as a saber, and the saber intent that wanted to destroy everything appeared again, and a shocking red flame saber light slashed out. The blade aura instantly defeated all the sword aura and sword energy. Even the phantoms of the Leng Shiqi were scattered. However, Jiwen did not relax at all because he still did not see Leng Shiqi. He panted heavily as his eyes swept across his surroundings. At the same time, he expanded his perception to the maximum, and finally detected a trace of abnormality. That strange movement came from underground. Suddenly, the ground under Jiwen's feet began to crack, and bursts of green light shot out like the sun. Immediately, the Leng Shiqi rose from the ground with the poisonous sun in his hand and fiercely blasted Jiwen's body. As Jiwen had just unleashed his power, he was still a little weak. He was caught off guard and was hit by the shining sun poisonous yang palm. He could only raise his red flame spiritual gang to offset a part of the palm power, but he was still sent flying. At the same time, the poisonous flames entered his body, causing Jiwen to raise his head and spit out a mouthful of blood. He hurriedly mobilized his spiritual power to suppress the poisonous flames. Everyone who saw this scene was stunned. They didn't even care about their opponents. They all looked at Leng Shiqi in disbelief, especially Dong Fangqi, Bu Yangqiu and others. They thought that it was shocking enough that Leng Shiqi could stall Jiwen, but now he could even hurt a master of the spirit gang realm. Those people from the extreme fire manor were even more ashen-faced. They were already at a great disadvantage, and all their hopes were pinned on Jiwen. However, Jiwen was no match for a spirit cultivator of the spirit aperture realm. This surprised them, and made them even more worried about their own lives. However, Leng Shiqi did not just want to hurt Jiwen. He put away the black jade sword and raised the devil arrival battle saber in his hand. Pure demonic aura surged with ferocious qi. At this moment, all his spiritual power and strength were gathered on the devil arrival battle saber. Jiwen keenly felt the strong murderous intent on Leng Shiqi. At this moment, he really felt the threat of death from the bottom of his heart. An idea that should not have appeared in his mind, and that was escape. A master of the spirit gang realm had to escape from a spirit cultivator of the spirit aperture realm. This was the biggest joke in the world. However, Jiwen did not care about his face at all. He cared more about his own life. Although he himself did not believe that Leng Shiqi could kill him, he remembered that when he almost died in the hands of a demon beast, he also felt the same. Even if he was wrong, he would be punished when he returned to the sect. Moreover, now it seemed that even if he could kill Leng Shiqi, the other disciples of the extreme fire manor would all die. He could not escape anyway, so he might as well leave. Unfortunately, just as he was about to escape, Leng Shiqi moved. Leng Shiqi suddenly swung his saber. When the saber slashed out, the surrounding space seemed to be frozen. Everything around him turned grayish-white. There was only a flash of saber light with various colors. This saber light seemed to split the sky and earth, cutting the gray space in half. Jiwen's body was about to be cut in half, but at this time, his body suddenly bloomed with a dazzling bloody light. At the same time, the jade pendant at his waist shattered, and a deep red flame emerged to protect him. This was Jiwen burning all the qi and blood in his body in a hurry, and he used his life-saving trump card. However, these things all returned to nothingness under that slash and were completely annihilated. Fortunately, Jiwen had finally left the gray-white space. He looked at the hideous and terrifying huge wound in front of him. Just a moment ago, he had almost been cut in half. Just as he was rejoicing that he survived, an invisible blade suddenly rushed into his brain, strangling his spirit and consciousness. Jiwen held his head and wailed in pain. At this moment, Leng Shiqi quietly appeared beside him, and easily chopped off his head with a swing of his sword. At this moment, all the buffs on Leng Shiqi had long faded, and his face was extremely pale, but his eyes were frighteningly bright. Especially when he held Jiwen's head in his hand, it scared everyone out of their wits. The disciples of Extreme Volcano Village only felt a roar in their heads, as if the sky had collapsed, and their vision turned black. Jiwen was dead? This spirit astral realm expert was dead? And he died in the hands of a spirit aperture realm expert. This was too absurd, and it was to the extent that they thought they were dreaming. Unfortunately, this was the truth. These people were stunned, but Dong Fangqi and the others were not. Although they were also shocked by Leng Shiqi's terrifying strength, they could not believe that Leng Shiqi could kill Jiwen. However, they were all elites with real power, so they quickly reacted and killed the disciples of Extreme Volcano Village one by one. Chapter 442. Rumble. Only a moment later, there was only one person left in the group of people from the Extreme Fire Village. He should have been dead for sure. However, there was an extremely powerful treasure on him that released explosive flames. The power in it was extremely powerful. Leng Shiqi and the others could only retreat. The person took advantage of the chaos to escape. However, when he ran a few feet away, hundreds of cold underworld threads entangled him. Extreme cold ice silk hands? You are from the bipolar mountain village. The person immediately shouted in shock and anger. Unfortunately, most of the cold underworld threads were melted by the terrifying flames when they passed through the sea of fire. They did not stop the person. The disciple of the extreme fire village was pleasantly surprised again, and fled in a hurry. Dong Fangqi walked to the side of Leng Shiqi. At this moment, the way he looked at Leng Shiqi had completely changed. If he was not convinced of Leng Shiqi before, that thought had completely disappeared now. He even wanted to curry favor with Leng Shiqi. He was only at the 5th level of the spirit aperture realm, but he could kill a master of the gang spirit realm. He could no longer be described as a genius. He was clearly abnormal. Such a person would definitely soar to the sky in the future. If he could please Leng Shiqi now, it would be of great benefit to Dong Fangqi in the future. Therefore, Dong Fangqi said with a smile, "Brother Lu is not only powerful but also wise. From the beginning, you have played the 2 second-class sex in the palm of your hand. I admire you." Bu Yangqiu also walked over and said, "Yes, Brother Lu's clever trick made the people of the Extreme Fire Village and the Bipolar Mountain Village fight. It gave us a great opportunity. Now Brother Lu deliberately let the disciple of the Extreme Fire Village go. He wanted him to go back and report, so that the conflict between the two sides will be more intense. As long as they fight to the death, the destruction of the Extreme Fire Village will be close at hand." The others also came up and complimented him. Now Leng Shiqi had completely conquered these arrogant geniuses in terms of strategy and strength. Of course, they had no choice but to accept it. The record of killing a master of Gang Spirit Realm was too frightening. Among these people, only Lian Yi didn't say much. Instead, her beautiful eyes were fixed on Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi casually waved his hand and said, "You're flattering me. There's still a long way to go before we can complete the mission. Let's hurry up and meet up with Di Chuan." When everyone gathered together, Leng Shiqi knew that Di Chuan's plan was going very smoothly. Their battle prowess was completely overwhelming. Moreover, one of them had specially imitated the sword technique of the extreme fire manner, and let the messenger go back. It was worth mentioning that the Delta Origi had performed exceptionally well during the battle. Not only did she fight 1 against 2, she even killed 2 spirit aperture stage early stage spirit cultivators. This battle record shocked Di Chuan and the others. However, when Di Chuan and the Delta Origi learned that Leng Shiqi had killed Jiwen of Gang Spirit Realm, they were all dumbfounded. Although each of them had experienced great storms and had heard of the spirit aperture stage killing Gang Spirit Realm cultivators, it was only by chance that Jiwen of Gang Spirit Realm. However, such a situation could only be achieved by someone at the peak of the spirit aperture realm by coincidence. However, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was only at the 5th layer of the spirit aperture realm. It was too terrifying to be able to kill a Gang Spirit Realm cultivator at the 5th level of the spirit aperture stage. Among them, Di Chuan's expression was the most strange. Only now did he know that when he fought with Leng Shiqi, the other party didn't use much strength at all. Otherwise, he was likely to be killed on the spot by Leng Shiqi. Delta Origi's eyes flashed with surprise. In fact, she was even more surprised. Her master, Bone Demon, had once explained to her the characteristics of each of the 4 realms of celestial being. Spirit cultivators of Gang Spirit Realm were actually qualified to touch a little bit of the power of heaven and earth. They use spiritual power as the foundation and external power as the supplement to steal a trace of the power of heaven and earth to condense Gang Spirit. Therefore, the fighting power of Gang Spirit Realm experts was very amazing. Not to mention other things, just Gang Spirit alone could crush spirit cultivators at the late stage of the spirit aperture stage. However, Leng Shiqi could cross several small realms and a big realm in a row and kill a Gang Spirit Realm expert. If Leng Shiqi could stall G1, Delta Origi could accept it in her heart, but Leng Shiqi's strength was far beyond her expectations. Therefore, at this moment, Delta Origi's hands hidden in her sleeves clenched tightly into fists. She thought to herself, "I can't catch up with him after all?" Leng Shiqi looked around and saw that there were no casualties, but a few people were injured. Finally, he looked at Delta Origi again. He knew that Delta Origi's strong character was up again. He could only smile bitterly and then asked, "By the way, how is Wan Xiaoyuan?" Di Chuan answered first, "We have quietly killed him on our way back." Hearing that, Leng Shiqi nodded. Okay, I'll go to the bipolar mountain village first. Now that Jihuashan village has lost Ji1, a master of Gang spirit realm, its battle strength has been greatly reduced. It's easy to persuade them to attack Jihuashan village. What we need to do is to use the power of the bipolar mountain village to destroy Ji1. As long as they destroyed Ji1, their mission would be completed. The others were also half happy and half worried when they heard this. It had only been about a month since they came to Saining City. If the plan went well, they would soon complete the mission. This speed was really fast. However, their test was not only to complete the mission, but also to see their personal performance. The mission was completed too fast. Some of them had not had time to show off before it was over, which made them a little worried. Among this group of people, Leng Shiqi, Dichuan, Dongfangqi, Buyangqiu and others all agreed that they could pass the test. Even Delta Origi had a great chance. After all, she had made great achievements. Therefore, they could only hope that they would be able to contribute more in the final battle and accumulate more merits. After discussing with the others, Leng Shiqi divided into two groups and went to the bipolar mountain village alone. The others all went to the vicinity of Jiwen and began to make the final preparations. Not long after, in Jiwen's house, Zhu Huarong directly overturned the table in front of him. Say that again. Zhu Huarong pointed at a person and roared with a faint flame all over his body. The person he pointed at was the one who was deliberately released by Leng Shiqi. He said tremblingly, "House Master, Elder Ji1 and other senior and junior brothers were killed. It was the people of Bipolar Mountain Village who did it. Although the leader hid his cultivation, he used ice silk hands. It can't be wrong. Xiao Jingwu, you destroyed my foundation. I'll kill you." When Zhu Huarong was about to go crazy, First Elder Heho came over. "House Master, you'd better think about what we should do if the Bipolar Mountain Village attacks us." Chapter 443. In the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold, Xiao Jingwu also received the news that all the experts in his sect had died. He also learned that Wan Xiaoyuan had died in Baichanggu. All of this was done by the Extreme Fire Village. Xiao Jingwu was both shocked and angry. Among the disciples he sent out, there were several Spirit Aperture Realm and a dozen Spirit Pulse Realm. These were the mainstays of the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold. With the death of these people, the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold could be said to have suffered a great loss. It would probably take more than 10 years to recover. And Wan Xiaoyuan's death had cut off the hope of the younger generation. Now not only was the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold short of manpower, but only Xiao Jingwu and the deputy chief, Hao Yushan, were left to support them. Xiao Jingwu couldn't wait to kill Zhu Huarong now, but he didn't dare. Instead he was worried, because the biggest advantage of the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold was that they had more Spirit Aperture Realm and Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators than the Extreme Fire Village. Now that more than 20 people had died, this advantage was gone. But the Extreme Fire Village had 3 Spirit Astral Realm experts. If the Extreme Fire Village attacked, he wasn't sure if he could withstand it. Hao Yushan also realized the seriousness of the matter and said, "Chief, should we go to the Discipline Commission to mediate?" The Discipline Commission always hoped that the territory under their jurisdiction would be peaceful. If the Extreme Fire Village made a big fuss, the Discipline Commission would definitely be unhappy. They might as well prepare some gifts and take the initiative to mediate. Although they would lose face, it was better than losing their lives. Xiao Jingwu was naturally unhappy. No, the Discipline Commission will definitely ask for an exorbitant price. Rather than that, it's better to go to the Tang family and the Tenju Wu. Besides, if the Extreme Fire Village wants to swallow us, aren't they afraid of breaking their teeth? I don't think they dare to fight to the death with us. Hao Yushan said worriedly, but even so, the Extreme Fire Village will take away a lot of resources. It won't be long before we are left far behind by the Extreme Fire Village. When you and I die, the mountain stronghold will inevitably be destroyed. Alas! Xiao Jingwu sighed deeply, as if he had aged a few years in an instant. I know what you said, but what can we do? We have no other choice but to endure. Hao Yushan was just about to say something when a voice suddenly sounded out. Fort Master Xiao, Forbearance can indeed temporarily alleviate the difficulties of the bipolar mountain stronghold, but blindly forbearance will only make the other party worse. Moreover, Fort Master Xiao shouldn't be thinking about compromising with the extreme fire manner, but how to destroy the extreme fire manner. Who is it? Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan's spiritual power surged violently, revealing a cold killing intent. There were still some spirit cultivators of the four realms of heaven and human in the bipolar mountain village. The two of them were masters of the spirit astral realm. This person could actually come here quietly. His strength could be imagined. A figure quietly appeared in front of them. It was Leng Shiqi. When Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan saw Leng Shiqi, they immediately felt that something was wrong. Originally, they thought that the person who could suddenly appear here should be at least in the gang spirit realm. But now the other party's aura was only in the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. Xiao Jingwu's killing intent became more blatant, but he didn't rush to make a move. Instead he asked, "Who are you? What's your purpose in sneaking into the bipolar mountain village? If you can't tell me why, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave." Hao Yushan also silently walked to the side of Leng Shiqi, and a gust of spiritual power enveloped him. Leng Shiqi said with a smile, "Fort Masters, you don't have to be so nervous. I'm actually here to give you gifts." Gifts? Gifts in this way? Of course, Xiao Jingwu didn't believe it. Leng Shiqi took out a mustard seed bag. Xiao Jingwu immediately made a vigilant action, and a strong spiritual pressure spread out. "This is my gift to the two Fort Masters. Please accept it." Leng Shiqi didn't care about Xiao Jingwu's action. He waved his hand, and suddenly more than 20 bloody heads scattered all over the ground with a strong smell of blood. Seeing these heads, even though Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan were both in the gang spirit realm and in high positions, they couldn't help but gasp. Because these heads were all from the disciples of Jihua Mountain Village. Because of the deep hatred between the two sides, they were also very familiar with the people of Jihua Mountain Village. At a glance, these heads were all from the disciples of Spiritual Pulse Realm and Spiritual Aperture Realm. Leng Shiqi said indifferently, "These people are the disciples of Jihua Mountain Village who intercepted and killed the bipolar mountain village on the way. Unfortunately, some of them are already dead and don't even have a complete head." Xiao Jingwu suppressed the horror in his heart. He suddenly thought of a question. "Are they really the ones who intercepted and killed my disciples? Are they really killed by you?" "Yes." "Nonsense!" Xiao Jingwu shouted angrily. "Not to mention that these people can't kill so many of my disciples. You don't have the ability to kill them either." Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "Don't be too decisive. These heads are just small gifts. I have a big gift here. Please take a look." After saying that, Leng Shiqi took out another head. It was Ji-Wen's head. Hao Yushan immediately exclaimed, "This is Ji-Wen? How is it possible?" Xiao Jingwu also stared. Seeing Ji-Wen's head here, they understood that if Ji-Wen had made a move, he could have killed many of their masters. However, the other party could actually kill Ji-Wen and a group of masters of Jihua Mountain Village. This showed that either the other party was terrifyingly powerful, or there was a group of powerful masters behind the other party. No matter which possibility it was, the other party was qualified to talk with them on an equal footing. At the same time, Xiao Jingwu keenly thought of one thing. That was, they did have the hope to destroy Jihua Mountain Village. More than a year ago, Jihua Mountain Village lost a large number of masters in the Phantom Spirit Secret Realm and the Demonic Beasts Rebellion. This was a good opportunity for Bipolar Mountain Village to rise. However, unexpectedly, Ji-Wen appeared out of nowhere and advanced to Gang Spirit Realm. He alone was equal to a group of Spiritual Aperture Realm and Spiritual Pulse Realm disciples. But now Ji-Wen was dead, and a large number of masters of Jihua Mountain Village were also dead. This meant that Jihua Mountain Village only had a few masters left. The reason why Xiao Jingwu wanted to compromise before was that he was not as strong as the other party. But now he found that Jihua Mountain Village was even weaker. So new and old hatred surged in his heart. He could not wait to take people to attack Jihua Mountain Village right now. However, at this time, Hao Yushan asked coldly, "Then who are you? Why are you here?" Chapter 444. Facing the question, Lung Shiqi took out his identity token and said harshly, "I'm Lu Xingji, the Great Supervisor of Dark Thunder Guards in Donglin County." Dark Thunder Guards. Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan looked at each other. Obviously, they didn't expect that the newcomer was from Dark Thunder Guards. They looked carefully at the token in Lung Shiqi's hand. It was indeed the Great Supervisor of Dark Thunder Guards. It couldn't be faked, and no one dared to do so. However, as a second-rate sect, Bipolar Village had to deal with Discipline Commission and Dark Thunder Guards. There were only a few great supervisors in Donglin County. How come they had never heard of Lu Xingji? Moreover, why did he help them? Lung Shiqi didn't lie to them. The token was real, but not completely real. If Xiao Jingwu saw the back of the token, he would find there were two small words, West Wilderness. He was using the sword of the previous dynasty to kill the official of the current dynasty. Xiao Jingwu withdrew his spiritual pressure and cupped his hands. "Your Excellency Lu, I'm curious. Why do you want to help me destroy Extreme Fire Village?" "Merit," Lung Shiqi said. "To tell you the truth, I've just been transferred here. As you can see, my cultivation is still in spiritual aperture realm. Some people don't like me. That's why I need a huge contribution to stabilize my position. Extreme Fire Manor's crimes are undeniable. Unfortunately, although I have some experts under me, it's still impossible for me to take down the Extreme Fire Manor. In addition, although Bipolar Village is now stronger than Extreme Fire Village, it's not easy for Master Xiao to bite this hard bone. Since neither of us can destroy Extreme Fire Village easily, why don't we join hands? It's a win-win situation." Speaking of this, Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan looked at each other. They were both tempted. Lung Shiqi led people to kill a large number of masters of Extreme Fire Village, including Ji1, a master in Gang Spirit Realm. As a result, the overall strength of Bipolar Village was higher than Extreme Fire Village. However, as Lung Shiqi said, it was not easy for them to destroy Extreme Fire Village. Even if they were to forcefully attack, they would also suffer heavy casualties. In this way, the gains would not make up for the losses. If Lung Shiqi and the power in his hands were added to the mix, the situation would be completely different. In their opinion, since Lung Shiqi could kill Ji1, it meant that there must be a master of Gang Spirit Realm behind him. At that time, as long as Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan delayed Zhu Huarong and He Ho, the others would slaughter the disciples of Extreme Fire Manor first, and then join forces to encircle Zhu Huarong. They would succeed. Lung Shiqi saw through their thoughts and continued. "The number of people I can use is not large, only a dozen or so, but these people are all at the Spirit Aperture Realm. More than 10 Spirit Aperture Realm experts. If that was the case, then this battle could be easily won." Lung Shiqi's words were like the last straw that broke the camel's back. Xiao Jingwu said directly, "Okay, I promise you." Hao Yushan gave Xiao Jingwu a subtle signal with his eyes, but Xiao Jingwu did not notice. He could only ask, "Sir Lu, forgive me for being a petty person and then a gentleman, but if we really manage to destroy the Extreme Fire Manor, what do you want?" He did not believe that Lung Shiqi only wanted a merit. Extreme Fire Village was a second-rate sect, and the resources it collected were shocking. Even if many of them had been stolen by demon beasts, those fixed resources could not be stolen. For example, spiritual veins, spiritual fields, and the extremely cold spiritual pond, etc. Lung Shiqi waved his hand and said, "I want all the resources that can be taken away by Extreme Fire Village." Hearing this, Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan both frowned. "Lord Lu's appetite is too big, isn't it?" Hao Yushan said with a slightly unhappy tone. "Our Bipolar Mountain Village is the main force in attacking Extreme Fire Village. After this battle, who knows how many of our disciples will die? Also, we will have to stop Zhu Huarong and He Ho. If Lord Lu wants all the resources, forgive me for being blunt, but there's no point in doing this deal." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi laughed in his heart. He had guessed that they would refuse, but the reason why he purposely asked for so much was because he wanted to completely change the topic to the distribution of benefits after the battle. In this way, it would be a tacit agreement that they would work together to destroy Extreme Fire Village. That was what he thought, but his face still darkened. "Fort Masters, as far as I know, there aren't many resources in the Supreme Fire Manor. Moreover, after this matter is over, all of Extreme Fire Village's territory, spiritual veins, businesses, and especially the resources of their disciples will be yours. This is a great benefit. If you two are so calculative about such small benefits, then I can leave immediately. I believe that Zhu Horong will welcome me. Leng Shiqi's last sentence shocked Xiao Jingwu and Hao Yushan. They immediately thought of a possibility, which was that Leng Shiqi needed a great contribution. If Leng Shiqi could choose to help them destroy Extreme Fire Village, then he could also do the opposite. As for whether the Bipolar Mountain Village had made a mistake or not, it was up to Leng Shiqi to decide. Are you threatening us? Hao Yushan said in a low voice. Leng Shiqi shook his head. I brought the heads of Extreme Fire Village's experts to see you too. This is already the greatest sincerity I can show. However, the two of you want to haggle over such a small amount of resources with me. This kind of vision and mindset is truly disappointing. Xiao Jingwu coughed dryly. Ahem, Lord Lu, please be patient. We'll do as you say. Next, let's discuss the specific plan. Plan? Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows and asked, Master Xiao, do you know the approximate number of Spirit Aperture Realm experts in Extreme Fire Village? Xiao Jingwu picked up a few heads from the ground and piled them to the side. Apart from these people, there should only be 8 or 9 people left. Leng Shiqi smiled. 8 or 9 Spirit Aperture Realm experts. Then what's the point of planning? Just fight and be done with it. We have more than 20 Spirit Aperture Realm experts on both sides. In front of absolute power, what's the point of scheming? Xiao Jingwu was stunned at first, then he laughed loudly. Brother Lu is right. When he said Brother Lu, Leng Shiqi knew that it was done. After Leng Shiqi left, Hao Yushan immediately said, Master, there's something wrong with this Lu Xingji. Xiao Jingwu replied, There's definitely something wrong with him, but our goal is the same. We both want to destroy Extreme Fire Village. When we attack Extreme Fire Village, we must be on guard against him. 2 days later, in Extreme Fire Village, Zhu Horong and He Ho were pacing back and forth in the hall. Especially Zhu Horong, who was sweating profusely. As the leader of a second-rate sect, he shouldn't be in such a state. However, he couldn't be blamed for this. After He Ho's reminder, he had indeed thought of the possibility that the Bipolar Mountain stronghold would attack the Extreme Fire Manor. After all, the hatred between them was too deep. Of course, they couldn't just sit and wait for death. Very quickly, they sent disciples to the nearby sects to ask for help, hoping that they could mediate. But until now, not a single person had returned. All the disciples that were sent out seemed to have disappeared into the sea. They lost contact with them, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The entire Extreme Fire Village seemed to be shrouded by a layer of dark clouds, pressuring people to the point that they couldn't breathe. He Ho deeply felt that Extreme Fire Village must have fallen into a huge conspiracy, but he couldn't figure it out at the moment. Suddenly, Zhu Horong slammed the table. I've had enough. Rather than waiting here blindly, why don't we just fight to the death with Xiao Jingwu? Chapter 445. But at this moment, a disciple of the Extreme Fire Village suddenly pushed open the door with a panicked expression. Zhu Horong couldn't help but scold. What are you doing in such a panic? Besides, we are having a meeting now. Who let you in? The disciple hurriedly said, Master Elder, it's not good. The people of the Bipolar Mountain Village are coming. Zhu Horong and He Ho were taken aback for a moment, and then a hint of panic appeared on their faces. How could they come so fast? However, Zhu Horong was the master of the village. Everyone could panic, but he couldn't. He waved his hand. Let's go out and have a look. At this moment, thousands of disciples of the Bipolar Mountain Village had gathered at the gate of the Extreme Fire Village. They all had a murderous look. Zhu Horong walked to the gate with a group of disciples. The moment he saw Xiao Jingwu, he shouted, Xiao Jingwu, you allowed your disciples to kill my son. I haven't taken revenge on you yet, but you dare to make trouble for me. Xiao Jingwu was also a man of few words. He said fiercely, cut the crap. There will be a battle between us sooner or later. Today either you die or I die. Kill. With a command, he clapped his hands. boundless extreme cold spiritual gang directly smashed the gate of the extreme fire village. Thousands of disciples immediately swarmed up with red eyes. Zhu Huarong never thought that Xiao Jingwu would start a fight without saying anything. Was he really not afraid of a life and death struggle? Who gave him the confidence? However, he didn't have time to think about it, because Xiao Jingwu had already charged at him. At the same time, Hao Yushan also went to He Ho. As soon as the four gang spirit realm experts fought, the surrounding thousands of feet was filled with exploding gang spirit. No one dared to take a step closer. The rest of the people were kings against kings and generals against generals. The battle of thousands of people started. In an instant, the sound of killing shook the sky and blood flowed everywhere. Among them, the most intense battle was the battle between the Spirit Aperture Realm experts on both sides. The Bipolar Mountain Village had 13 Spirit Aperture Realm experts, which was 5 more than the Extreme Fire Village. Therefore, they had a great advantage as soon as they fought. However, the Spirit Aperture Realm was still the Spirit Aperture Realm. Even though the Extreme Fire Manor was at a great disadvantage, it wouldn't be easy to kill them in a short period of time. However, at this moment, 14 figures had silently arrived on the battlefield. The people from the Extreme Fire Manor were caught in a bitter battle, and had no time to divert their attention. Thus, they didn't pay too much attention to them in the beginning. However, when the 14 people approached, they all erupted with powerful auras belonging to the Spirit Aperture Realm. Everyone from the Extreme Fire Manor turned pale with fright, but before they could react, more than 20 Spirit Aperture Realm experts erupted with all their strength and killed all 8 Spirit Aperture Realm experts from the Extreme Fire Manor. The 14 people who suddenly appeared were naturally Lung Shiqi and the others. However, Lung Shiqi didn't bring everyone. Moreover, he only brought people at the mid and late stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm, including Di Chuan, Dong Fengqi, and the others. As for the remaining people, they had all gone to another place. The appearance of Lung Shiqi and the others instantly changed the situation of the battle. The Spirit Aperture Realm experts of the Extreme Fire Manor were all dead. The remaining Spirit Pulse Realm and low-level disciples could only be slaughtered. Of course, the scene of them killing the 8 Spirit Aperture Realm experts with lightning speed was also witnessed by others. For the disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor, they were all horrified. Some of them even began to run for their lives. Zhu Huarong was both shocked and furious. His eyes were bloodshot. He never expected that the Extreme Fire Manor would invite more than 10 Spirit Aperture Realm experts. No wonder Xiao Jingwu was so confident. However, where did Xiao Jingwu find so many experts? Zhu Huarong couldn't understand. At this moment he didn't want to think about it because he could see that the Extreme Fire Manor had already lost. Whether the 20 Spirit Aperture Realm experts went to kill the low-level disciples or to surround and kill him, and He Ho, they were all destined to fail. Failure also meant death. The Extreme Fire Manor had been passed down for over 100 years. Hatefully, it was going to be destroyed in his hands today. Zhu Huarong's heart was filled with endless hatred. Right now he only wanted to kill Xiao Jingwu. Ha! Zhu Huarong suddenly roared. A scarlet cloud of fire suddenly appeared in the sky, causing the temperature of the entire Extreme Fire Manor to rise. Many low-level disciples were sweating profusely, and almost couldn't breathe. Suddenly, a pillar of fire descended from the cloud of fire. Zhu Huarong was bathed in it. His body was rapidly growing. His black hair turned fiery red and danced in the wind. His aura was already infinitely close to the unity of heaven and man realm. This was the most profound secret technique of the Extreme Fire Manor. It could allow Zhu Huarong's cultivation to increase explosively in a short period of time. However, the price was to burn his lifespan. In other words, he was squandering his life. Xiao Jingwu's expression was abnormally serious. Zhu Huarong's soaring killing intent was locked onto him. Zhu Huarong was going to fight with his life on the line, so he had to be careful. Moreover, Xiao Jingwu could also see that Zhu Huarong couldn't hold on for long in this state. He only needed to stall Zhu Huarong. Next, red and blue light intersected around Xiao Jingwu's body. The blazing flames and the cold frost intertwined, forming a mystical pattern. 2 supreme power masters at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm were going all out. Seeing this, The Spirit Aperture Realm disciples of the Bipolar Mountain Village all wanted to help. Although there was a huge gap between their realms, they could still harass from the side as long as they worked together. However, Leng Shiqi said, both of them are ready to fight to the death. Once they start fighting, I'm afraid we'll be affected before we even get close to them. Moreover, there's no room for distraction in a fight between masters. If we rush forward rashly, not only will we be affected, but will also disturb Master Xiao. In addition, Zhu Huarong must have used some forbidden secret technique. As long as Master Xiao can stall him for a moment, Zhu Huarong will be defeated. We'd better get rid of the Spirit Aperture Realm disciples of the Extreme Fire Village as soon as possible. As long as they die, the foundation of the Extreme Fire Village will be completely destroyed. The people of the Bipolar Mountain Village thought for a while, and felt that what Leng Shiqi said was reasonable. So they all rushed to kill the other disciples of the Extreme Fire Village. Leng Shiqi smiled secretly. He didn't lie to anyone just now. He just avoided the important and dwell on the trivial. Zhu Huarong couldn't hold on for long, but his fighting capacity at this time was definitely much higher than Xiao Jingwu's. The most important thing was that the mentality of the two sides was different. Zhu Huarong was fighting with the determination to die, while Xiao Jingwu only wanted to stall. In this way, Xiao Jingwu was bound to lose. Of course, it was still very difficult for Zhu Huarong to kill Xiao Jingwu. After all, Xiao Jingwu was the head of a second-rate sect. He must have some life-saving trump cards. So in the end, both sides would suffer great losses. At that time, it would be the turn of the Spirit Aperture Realm disciples to fight. Chapter 446. The following battle was simple. A group of Spiritual Aperture Realm experts charged into the Spiritual Pulse Realm. It was like a tiger charging into a flock of sheep. As for the low-level disciples of Extreme Fire Village who were below the 4 realms of celestial being, they were all scared out of their wits and retreated in defeat. Meanwhile, the people of Bipolar Mountain Village went crazy. Both sides had accumulated grievances for a long time and hated each other to the core. Especially when Extreme Fire Village won the Extreme Cold Spirit Pool 3 times in a row. The disciples of Bipolar Mountain Village were furious. At this moment, they turned all their hatred and resentment into fighting strength. The more they fought, the fiercer they became. In just a moment, nearly half of the disciples of Extreme Fire Village were killed. Seeing this, Zhu Huarong became even crazier. He completely ignored his own defense and attacked Xiao Jingwu like a madman. Xiao Jingwu never fought with him head-on. He always blocked if he could and dodged if he couldn't. However, in Leng Shiqi's view, Xiao Jingwu was already struggling. If he didn't use some trump cards, he would probably be injured. Zhu Huarong suddenly pulled at the void with his hands. In an instant, he seemed to have torn the space apart. An irregular portal appeared in front of him. That portal faintly revealed a heart-palpitating power. He Ho's expression suddenly changed. He seemed to have thought of something and shouted with grief and indignation, "Village Lord!" Xiao Jingwu was shrouded by the terrifying aura. His heart jumped. He didn't dare to hide his strength anymore. A saber and a sword appeared in his hands. The power of ice and fire surged around him. The two opposite attributes combined and twisted the universe. A trace of blood flowed out of Zhu Huarong's mouth inexplicably, but he also sneered. He roared. Immediately, a strange monster rushed out of the irregular portal. The monster was more than 10 feet tall, and was red all over. There was a pair of huge ferocious arms on its back. The monster's body shook slightly. Endless flames spread out and filled the entire Extreme Fire Village. Judging from the aura, this monster was comparable to a 6th-rank demonic beast. It was comparable to the existence of unity of heaven and man. While Leng Shiqi was forced back by the flames, he was secretly glad that he didn't fight Zhu Huarong head-on. Although they were all in Gang Spirit Realm, Ji1 and Zhu Huarong couldn't compare at all. If Leng Shiqi were to fight with Zhu Huarong, he would probably be thinking about how to escape within a few moves. As soon as the monster appeared, Zhu Huarong's aura began to rapidly wither. Obviously, he had paid a great price to summon this monster. Then Zhu Huarong made a hand seal, and the monster stared at Xiao Jingwu with its red eyes. At this time, Xiao Jingwu was holding a sword and a blade in his hand. The red and blue lights on his body were intertwined. He held his breath and didn't dare to be careless. Under Zhu Huarong's control, the monster opened its four arms, and flames soared into the sky. Even the world seemed to tremble. The monster charged toward Xiao Jingwu with a wave of fire. Xiao Jingwu's face also turned red, and he started to burn his qi and blood to resist. However, to everyone's surprise, the monster suddenly turned around halfway and attacked Hao Yushan. Since the beginning of the battle, Hao Yushan had been fighting with He Ho. However, the two of them were not as fierce as Zhu Huarong. They were both in the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm, and their strength was well matched. The two of them also knew that they couldn't do anything to each other. Although He Ho wanted to get rid of Hao Yushan, he had no way to do so. Hao Yushan, on the other hand, was delaying He Ho with a smile. He also saw that his disciples had killed more than half of the people from Extreme Fire Manor. It wouldn't be long before Extreme Fire Manor was wiped out from Donglin County. But suddenly, the monster summoned by Zhu Huarong rushed at him, which made Hao Yushan turn pale with fright. The monster's strength was comparable to a rank 6 demonic beast. How could Hao Yushan resist it? What was more, he had no time to make any preparations in a hurry. At this time, He Ho suddenly took action. He swept his two swords, and the blazing sword gang came out, blocking all of Hao Yushan's retreat. Hao Yushan was suddenly filled with despair, but before he could use his trump card, he heard an earth-shattering sound. Then a burst of monstrous flames swept in all directions, making more than half of the whole Jihuashan village collapse in an instant. Lung Shiqi opened his supercilious eyes and looked at the center of the battle, where Hao Yushan's spiritual aura had disappeared. This also meant that Hao Yushan, the deputy chief of Bipolar Mountain Village, and a master of Gang Spirit Realm, had died. Zhu Huarong's situation was also very bad. At this moment, the spiritual energy and qi and blood in his body were almost exhausted. But he laughed loudly, ha ha ha. Xiao Jingwu, even if you can destroy Jihuashan village, so what? Before I die, I also take someone down with me. It's worth it, worth it. It turned out that Zhu Huarong knew that even if he used all his trump cards, he might not be able to kill Xiao Jingwu, so he targeted Hao Yushan from the beginning. The destruction of Jihuashan village was irreversible. Before he died, he could take Hao Yushan down with him, which could be regarded as breaking one of the front teeth of Bipolar Mountain Village. Xiao Jingwu was not injured at all, but his face was extremely pale. Today's matter was in the bag, but unexpectedly, Zhu Huarong risked his life to kill Hao Yushan. Hao Yushan was not only a master of Gang Spirit Realm, but also the think tank of Bipolar Mountain Village, Xiao Jingwu's right-hand man, and his best friend. Just when he was so angry that he wanted to kill Zhu Huarong, Lung Shiqi's voice came. Chief Xiao, Zhu Huarong is stalling you. He Ho has run away. After this reminder, Xiao Jingwu found that He Ho, the first elder of Jihuashan village, had disappeared. He Ho was a master of Gang Spirit Realm. He must not be allowed to escape, or there would be endless troubles. If a master of Gang Spirit Realm, who bore the pain of the destruction of his family, really escaped, he would become a viper hiding in the dark all the time in the future. As long as the disciples of Bipolar Mountain Village dared to show up, they might be attacked by He Ho. But it was impossible for Bipolar Mountain Village to hide in the village forever, so He Ho could not be left alive. Xiao Jingwu waved his sword and saber, chopping out two dazzling ice and fire spiritual gang, one red and one blue, to kill Zhu Huarong. Immediately, he chased after He Ho without looking at him. Zhu Huarong had been exhausted and had no strength to resist at all. In the twinkling of an eye, he was annihilated by the ice and fire spiritual gang, and died without an intact body. Everyone thought that Zhu Huarong had died, and the disciples of Jihuashan village had lost their fighting spirit, leaving only the road of being slaughtered. But Lung Shiqi's eyes flashed. He looked around and finally looked at a direction below. He slightly raised the corner of his mouth and murmured, Zhu Huarong, you deserve to be the head of Jihuashan village. You even have such a method of faking your death. Unfortunately, you met me. Chapter 447. In the depths of the extreme volcano manor, there was a secret room. It was originally covered in formations and restrictions, but a part of it was damaged by the battle above. At this moment, a figure staggered into the secret room. His skin was lacerated, and there wasn't a single place that was intact. The blood that flowed out had also congealed into blood spots. He was the master of the extreme volcano manner, Zhu Huarong. Everyone thought that he had been killed by Xiao Jingwu, but he had strangely appeared here. Zhu Huarong dragged his heavily injured and broken body into the secret room. He formed seals with his hands to undo the restrictions and barriers. Finally, he arrived in front of a large door. However, this door was on the ground. In other words, this door led underground. Zhu Huarong immediately took out a flame-shaped token and imprinted it on the door. The door immediately trembled and opened a crack. Immediately after, a red light shot out from the crack and illuminated the entire secret room. Zhu Huarong's face also showed a bit of confusion. His expression immediately became hesitant, but in the end, he seemed to have made a decision and pulled the door open with all his might. Blazing flames spread out. Zhu Huarong took a deep breath and jumped in. After he jumped in, Leng Shiqi's figure quietly appeared. He focused his gaze and looked down. He discovered that there was a sea of fire under the door. To be more precise, it was a sea of lava. At this moment, Leng Shiqi remembered that the extreme volcano manor was located on top of an extinct volcano. Could this be the depths of that volcano? Then why did Zhu Huarong not choose to escape after faking his death, and instead came here? Leng Shiqi's eyes lit up. There must be something more precious than Zhu Huarong's life down there. He couldn't help but rub his chin. Then his body lit up with spirit armor, and he also jumped down. After jumping down, Leng Shiqi first found a rock to stand on. The only thing he felt was heat. One had to know that Leng Shiqi was at the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. He was already immune to cold and heat. Even with the protection of his spiritual armor, he still felt the heat. One could imagine how high the temperature of the surrounding lava was. Leng Shiqi moved his spiritual power, and cold air gushed out. However, the cold air evaporated as soon as it appeared, but it made him feel better. He rolled his eyes and quickly found Zhu Huarong's position. Then he followed her. The deeper Zhu Huarong went, the higher the temperature became. Even the air was distorted by the heat. However, he seemed to have some kind of secret technique that allowed him to remain unaffected by the temperature. About a quarter of an hour later, Zhu Huarong arrived at a small high platform. The platform was ice blue in color. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the entire platform was made of ice jade. A palm-sized golden flame floated at the top of the platform. In this extremely hot environment, this kind of ice jade was still intact. Clearly, this ice jade was a rare treasure. Zhu Huarong secretly let out a sigh of relief when he arrived. He stared at the golden flames in infatuation and murmured, "Crimson gold earth dragon flames, only you can save me now. Only you can save the extreme fire manor." Leng Shiqi, who was following behind him, heard this and was shocked. He remembered that he had seen the name Pure Gold Earth Dragon Flame in an ancient book from 10,000 years ago in the illusory spirit secret realm. It was said that this world would give birth to some heavenly variants. The conditions for these heavenly variants to appear were extremely harsh. But once they were born, they would contain a portion of the world's power. Different types of heavenly variants would contain different amounts of world's power. They could be roughly divided into the 5 elements, 3 talents, yin and yang. Moreover, even if they were of the same type, different types of heavenly variants would be born in different environments. For example, the ice type included zero ice, hell ice, and so on. The pure gold earth dragon flame was one of the fire type heavenly variants. It was said that this strange flame could only be born in the depths of a volcano. However, the probability of this happening was extremely small. It had never appeared in the past 10,000 years. Who would have thought that the pure gold earth dragon flame would be born in the extinct volcano under the extreme fire manor? Leng Shiqi also recalled that the pure gold earth dragon flame naturally had a great restraining effect on evil spirits. It could be said that the moment the pure gold earth dragon flame appeared, all evil spirits would be forced to retreat. He also suddenly realized that Nine Leaf had said that there was a treasure in the extreme fire manor. Could it be that he was referring to the pure gold earth dragon flame? The more Leng Shiqi thought about it, the more likely it was. Nine Leaf had said that she couldn't even get close. It seemed that the pure gold earth dragon flame had some restraining effect on demonic beasts like Nine Leaf. He couldn't help but think, I really didn't expect a second-rate sect like the Extreme Fire Manor to hide such a treasure. If outsiders knew, the Extreme Fire Manor would have been destroyed long ago. I originally thought that Zhu Huarong had hidden some cultivation resources here. Now I've run into a heavenly variant. It seems that I'm really lucky. Zhu Huarong walked into the pure gold earth dragon flame with a complicated expression. The bipolar mountain village had invited so many experts from somewhere. Now the destruction of the Extreme Fire Manor had become a foregone conclusion. His heart was full of hatred, but he knew that it was impossible for him to take revenge alone with his cultivation at the late stage of Gang's spirit realm. Therefore, he didn't run away after faking his death. Instead, he chose to collect the pure gold earth dragon flame. Only by collecting the pure gold earth dragon flame could he break through to the realm of oneness of heaven and men with the help of the power of heaven and earth in it. Only then would he have the qualification, strength, and opportunity to take revenge. But how could the pure gold earth dragon flame be collected so easily? Actually, this item had already been discovered when the Extreme Fire Manor was founded. It was precisely because this volcano had produced the crimson gold earth dragon flame that it had absorbed all of its energy and became an extinct volcano. Therefore, although the pure gold earth dragon flame was only the size of a palm, the power it contained was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. For hundreds of years, the Extreme Fire Manor had been secretly studying how to collect the flame. However, they didn't succeed even though they had spent countless resources, and a large number of genius disciples had died. Zhu Huarong had also been making preparations. Without perfect preparation, he wouldn't dare to collect the pure gold earth dragon flame rashly. But now he couldn't hesitate anymore. He had to give it a try at the risk of his life. Then, Zhu Huarong took out a large number of materials from his mustard bracelet. More than 80% of them were ice-class materials. He used these materials to set up a simple formation around the pure gold earth dragon flame. Suddenly, the area within a radius of several feet became as cold as a 10,000-year-old ice cave. The pure gold earth dragon flame seemed to have dimmed a little. Zhu Huarong's face showed a hint of joy, but soon his expression froze, because a saber light inexplicably appeared in front of him. Chapter 448. Leng Shiqi held the Devil's Arrival saber, which was dripping with blood. It was the blood of a master in Gang's spirit realm, the owner of Extreme Volcano Manor, Zhu Huarong. Zhu Huarong was already at the end of his strength, and he forcibly set up the formation, which made him almost unable to fight. However, Leng Shiqi still dared not to be careless. He directly used Divine Ephemeral Bloom to kill Zhu Huarong with all his strength. And in order to make sure that Zhu Huarong did not fake his death, Leng Shiqi specially waited until he absorbed the power of Zhu Huarong's remnant soul. Then he did not dare to delay for a moment. He had to collect the red gold earth dragon flame before the formation completely collapsed. Of course, he did not know how to collect the red gold earth dragon flame, nor did he intend to collect it seriously. Leng Shiqi was instantly covered with a set of ferocious black armor, and then the armor emitted colorful streamers. Gu King armor. After preparing these, Leng Shiqi directly reached out to grab the red gold earth dragon flame. However, as soon as he approached, the streamers on his palm twisted and collapsed. When he got closer, the demon beast blood pattern armor began to melt. Leng Shiqi immediately changed his face and hurriedly stopped. He furrowed his brows as his thoughts raced. He looked down at the demon beast blood pattern armor and the colorful scale armor of Gu King armor on his body, and suddenly patted his head. The red gold earth dragon flame is supposed to suppress the power of these demons. How could I use these special means? Then he immediately removed the two spiritual armors, and his body flashed with golden Buddha light. At the same time, streaks of silver holy power condensed into a cloak behind him. These were the beast spirit battle patterns of the flower pinching posture, and the holy silver deer. The energy emitted by the two was also the power to suppress demons. After all, it was somewhat similar to the red gold earth dragon flame. This time, Leng Shiqi approached the red gold earth dragon flame again, and it was much easier than before. However, the extreme power of the crimson gold earth dragon flame was still too much for Leng Shiqi to handle. He made up his mind and ignored the palm, directly touching the crimson gold earth dragon flame. At that moment, Leng Shiqi felt an extreme pain coming from his palm. This was the most heart-wrenching pain he had ever felt in his life. He couldn't help but cry out in pain. However, he was still very calm in his heart. At that moment, with a single thought, the crimson gold earth dragon flame disappeared into thin air. Following which, Leng Shiqi looked at the crimson gold earth dragon flame sitting quietly in his bag, a smile appearing on his face. He raised his left hand shakily, only to find that his palm had been badly mutilated and charred black. His eyes could not help but be slightly shocked. His body was not weak, and just the strength of his body was comparable to a spirit pulse realm cultivator. However, his body was almost melted the moment it came into contact with the crimson gold earth dragon flame. This was under the suppression of the array, as well as the assimilation of the Buddhist light and holy power. Under normal circumstances, Leng Shiqi's entire body would have melted. The crimson gold earth dragon flame was actually so terrifying. However, the stronger it was, the happier Leng Shiqi was because the crimson gold earth dragon flame was already his. Although he could not refine the crimson gold earth dragon flame yet, he had a lot of time to study it in the future. Sooner or later he would be able to refine it. With the crimson gold earth dragon flame, Leng Shiqi did not care about the other cultivation resources of the extreme fire manor anymore. Of course, he would still take what he needed. After treating his wounds, Leng Shiqi picked up Zhu Huarong's storage bracelet and returned to the ground. At this time, the battle was already over. Other than a few disciples who escaped, everyone else from the extreme fire manor had died here. The bipolar stronghold also sent out a large number of people to hunt down the people who escaped. Everyone knew that the wildfire could not burn away the wildfire. After Leng Shiqi met up with a dozen other elites from the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guard, they went straight to the Extreme Fire Manor's treasure vault. They took out mustard seed bag after mustard seed bag, and kept taking out the cultivation resources in the treasure vault. Although this place had been destroyed by Nine Leaf once, the Extreme Fire Manor was still a second-rate sect that had been passed down for hundreds of years. Its foundation was not bad. Just the remaining resources were enough to make countless people jealous. Many disciples of the bipolar stronghold watched with red eyes as they took out the resources. They even secretly swallowed their saliva. Meanwhile, Leng Shiqi and the others were naturally overjoyed. Now that the Extreme Fire Manor had been destroyed, their mission could be considered complete. They had even earned so many resources for free. Even if they were to split them evenly in the end, it would still be a considerable amount of wealth. Right now, the only person that Leng Shiqi was a little worried about was He-Ho. As long as He-Ho was alive, the Extreme Fire Manor could still rise from the ashes. Fortunately, Xiao Jingwu came back not long later. He came back with He-Ho's head. Leng Shiqi also looked at Xiao Jingwu a few more times. Although Xiao Jingwu's cultivation was a few levels higher than He-Ho's, being able to successfully kill him meant that Xiao Jingwu's true strength was also very strong. Xiao Jingwu looked at the ruined Extreme Fire Manor and laughed loudly. He had fought with Zhu Huarong for decades, and in the end he still won. Leng Shiqi stepped forward and cupped his hands. Congratulations, Master Xiao. From now on, the bipolar stronghold's glory is just around the corner. Ha ha ha, this is all thanks to Lord Lu. Tonight, we must drink until we are drunk. This one appreciates Master Zhao's good intentions, Leng Shiqi tactfully declined. Unfortunately, this one still has official business to attend to, so it is inconvenient for me to disturb you. Xiao Jingwu was in high spirits, so he didn't mind. Leng Shiqi casually exchanged a few pleasantries with him before leaving. However, Xiao Jingwu didn't see that when Leng Shiqi left, he had a sinister smile on his face. On the other side, when the bipolar stronghold broke through the Extreme Fire Manor, 9 figures suddenly appeared in the stronghold. These people included Delta Origi and Lianyi. Most of them were at the early stage of the Spirit Aperture realm, so Leng Shiqi didn't let them participate in the direct battle. Instead, they secretly came here. The bipolar stronghold could be said to have sent out all of their forces to attack the Extreme Fire Manor. Right now, the entire stronghold only had a few low-level disciples and a handful of Sky Realm experts left. Lianyi smiled and said, Brother Lu's appetite is quite big. Not only do you want to swallow the resources of the Extreme Fire Manor, You even want to take everything from the bipolar stronghold. Unfortunately, we didn't participate in the direct battle, so I'm afraid we won't be able to get much merit. Delta Origi glanced at her and said, getting the resources of the bipolar stronghold will naturally be a great merit. However, there will definitely be formations in the treasury. This will be a bit troublesome. At this moment, a person walked out from the crowd. It was a middle-aged man with 2 long strands of beard. He stroked his beard and said, haha, this one's knowledge is shallow, but I do know a thing or two about formations. I can't say that I can break through all of the formations in the treasury, but I'm confident in breaking through half of them. Chapter 449. One day later, Xiao Jingwu returned to the bipolar mountain village with his men after dealing with everything in the Jihuo village. However, when he returned to the sect, he found something very strange. The disciples in the 4 realms of celestial being who stayed here didn't show up. They were specially left to guard the sect's treasure house. Now they didn't show up, which made Xiao Jingwu uneasy. He hurried to the treasure house with his men. When he opened the door of the treasure house, he was stunned instantly. As the leader of a second-class sect and a master in the late stage of Gang Spirit realm, Xiao Jingwu showed such an expression. He didn't even lose his composure when facing Zhu Huarong, who was fighting desperately. Because at this moment, almost half of the formation and inhibition in the treasure house had been destroyed. There were several corpses lying on the ground, which were the corpses of the disciples who stayed in the treasure house. However, the treasury was already empty. Such a huge treasury had actually been emptied. Xiao Jingwu felt as if there was a thunderbolt in his mind, which made him a little confused for a while. The elders and disciples behind him were all dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they saw. This instantly extinguished their joy of wiping out the Jihuo village. Crack, crack, crack. Xiao Jingwu clenched his fists, making cracking sounds. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Who is it? Who is it?" Although he wiped out the Jihuo village, Hao Yushan died, and he didn't get any resources from the Jihuo village. It could be said that although he won this battle, what he won was only the potential for development and the future. He didn't get too many substantial resources. Now his property had been emptied by someone secretly. He couldn't even pay the monthly salary of his disciples. It was conceivable that there would be hostility within the sect for a period of time. This was not the point. The most important thing was that it might take him 10 or more years to accumulate so many resources again. This meant that the bipolar mountain village had regressed for more than 10 years. Now his bipolar stronghold only had a large territory, but couldn't even take out a single bit of resources. If this matter was known by other sects, they would definitely have other thoughts. At that time, they would fight for territory and business. In the end, the bipolar mountain fort was actually not as powerful as before they destroyed the extreme fire manor. Xiao Jingwu was filled with hatred and anger, but he didn't even know who he should hate. He could only rage helplessly. Investigate. Go and investigate. We must find out who did it. The culprits of this matter, Leng Shiqi and the others, had already gathered in Shining City. They were gathered in a dilapidated house. There were a total of 23 mustard seed bags on the table in the middle, which contained all kinds of resources from the extreme fire manor and the bipolar stronghold. Everyone's breathing was a little hurried and heavy. Anyone who saw so many resources would be moved. From time to time, everyone would look at one person, and that was Leng Shiqi. This time, not only did they successfully complete the mission, but they also obtained countless resources and wealth. And all of this was brought to them by Leng Shiqi. At the beginning of the mission, Leng Shiqi used the conflict between Zhu Lin and Wan Xiaoyuan to incite a war between the two sides. Then he killed the experts of both sides. Then he persuaded Xiao Jingwu to attack the extreme fire manor. He really displayed his scheming and strength to the fullest. More than 90% of the people present were sincerely convinced by him. So before Leng Shiqi said anything, they wouldn't rashly touch these resources. Leng Shiqi casually weighed the mustard seed bags. Among all the resources he had seen, this was the most abundant one except for the Gu God sect. He was also very tempted. These resources have been evenly distributed. There are a total of 23 mustard seed bags, one for each of you. However, everyone's needs may be different, so you can exchange with each other later. While speaking, Leng Shiqi casually picked up one of the mustard seed bags and stood to the side. The others looked at each other with a bit of astonishment in their eyes. They originally thought that Leng Shiqi would definitely monopolize the majority. After all, Leng Shiqi played a huge role, and they were all mentally prepared. But Leng Shiqi was willing to share the resources with everyone equally? This was all the wealth of a half-second-rate sect, and he was actually willing to give up most of it. Unconsciously, everyone felt some respect for him in their hearts. In the end, they didn't have much to do with Leng Shiqi. After this mission, some of them would be eliminated and returned to their own provinces. Even if Dongfangqi, Dichuan, and the others could pass the test, they would disperse after the elite meeting. It was very likely that they would never see each other again in this life. So they felt that Leng Shiqi didn't need to rope them in now. Leng Shiqi was willing to share so many resources with them. It was completely righteous of him. Dichuan was the first to cup his hands and say, "Brother Liu, your strength and ability were stronger than mine before. But to be honest, I was still a little unconvinced. But now, Dichuan, I'm truly convinced by Brother Liu. If you need me in the future, just let me know." Leng Shiqi chuckled and said, "Brother D, you're too polite." After that, he picked up a mustard seed bag from the table and personally handed it to Dichuan. After that, everyone said a few words before taking the mustard seed bag. It was unknown how many of these people were sincere and how many of them were faking it, but at this moment, Leng Shiqi's reputation was unprecedented. Among everyone, only Delta Origi could roughly guess Leng Shiqi's thoughts. Delta Origi could be said to know Leng Shiqi very well. He was definitely a guy who wouldn't act without benefits. How could he give away wealth so easily? She guessed that the reason why Leng Shiqi did this was actually to establish good karma. Some of the reasons might be because of the Blood Seed project, because she also understood that if the Blood Garment Pavilion wanted to make a comeback in the future, it would inevitably attract the attention of countless sections. When that time came, the people present might also be in high positions and could more or less provide some help. Even if they couldn't help with this favor, they wouldn't hit them when they were down. Giving these people 10% of the benefits before they really rose up was far more useful than giving them 100% of the benefits after they became famous. Leng Shiqi secretly glanced at Delta Origi, knowing that she must be guessing his thoughts. However, Delta Origi was only half right. In addition, Leng Shiqi intended to completely convince these people to trust him and prepare for the next mission. Although in the past, the elite meeting only had one round of test, this time was completely different. Moreover, Leng Shiqi also had a hunch that there might be follow-up missions this time. Chapter 450. The news that Jihuashan village, a second-rate sect, was destroyed soon became the most explosive topic in the whole Donglin County. In Donglin County, there was almost no sect being destroyed in the past few decades. However, after Feng Xiaomo came to Donglin County, there seemed to be a strange prelude. 2 third-rate sects, including Golden Wing Academy, were destroyed one after another. Later, the collapse of the Phantom Spirit secret land led to the tragic death of many spiritual pulse realm cultivators. Donglin County was in turmoil, and several third-rate forces disappeared from the world. However, until now, there had never been a case of a second-rate sect being annihilated. Jihuashan village became the first second-rate sect to be destroyed in Donglin County in decades. The bipolar mountain village, which destroyed Jihuashan village, did not act in a high-profile manner after the event. Instead, they kept a low profile, which was very strange. When the news reached the ears of Wu Diao and Zhuge, the other 2 leaders of the task, they were both shocked. The task of the 2 men was to destroy the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt Gang, respectively, and they also gained something. However, the biggest problem in front of them was how to deal with the masters of Gang Spirit Realm, and how to ensure that all the low-level disciples were killed. Both Wu Diao and Zhuge could completely crush the disciples of Gang Spirit Realm and Gang Spirit Realm in the Great Righteousness sect and the Salt Gang. However, it was difficult for them to kill the masters of Gang Spirit Realm. Even if they joined hands to kill the masters of Gang Spirit Realm, they could win, but it was almost impossible to kill them. Moreover, every second-rate sect had a large number of low-level disciples. Those people were not pigs. They would not stand there and be killed. Some of them would definitely run away. If these two problems could not be solved, they would never be able to complete the task. When they were all badly battered by this matter, the news that Bipolar Mountain Village attacked Jiahuashan Village came. When they heard this, their first thought was that it was so fast. Leng Shiqi and others completed the task too fast. It had only been more than a month. That was to say, it only took him half of the time to destroy Jiahuashan Village. At the same time, Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha also guessed that Leng Shiqi had cleverly borrowed the power of the Bipolar Mountain stronghold to complete the mission. Wu Diao clicked his tongue and exclaimed, "Wonderful, wonderful! What a good plan to kill with a borrowed knife, driving the tiger to swallow the wolf. I really want to know how Lu Xingji did it." The person next to him said, "Brother Wu, is that Lu Xingji breaking the rules by borrowing the power of the Bipolar Mountain stronghold? Now it seems that although he has completed the mission, it doesn't necessarily count." "No." Wu Diao shook his head and said, "The rules don't allow us to use the forces behind us, and Lu Xingji came all the way from the Western Desolate Province. It's impossible for him to have anything to do with the bipolar stronghold. Moreover, they only said that we can't rely on our own backgrounds, but they didn't say that we can't work together. Lu Xingji's actions gave me an idea. Go and call everyone over. I have something important to discuss with them." "Okay, Brother Wu." On the other side, Zhuge Puha did the same thing. And in the governor's mansion of Donglin Town, Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao also got the information about this matter. At this moment, there was a third person in the hall of the governor's mansion. This person was the steward of the Wind Towers branch in Donglin Town, shopkeeper Jing. In fact, the information Lei Mayan and Eunuch Gao got was not only about the destruction of the extreme volcano village, but also described in detail how Leng Shiqi started from the conflict between Zhu Lin and Wan Xiaoyuan, and gradually expanded the grudge between the two sides. In the end, it led the Bipolar Mountain stronghold to attack the extreme volcano village with all their strength. Even Leng Shiqi's direct killing of Ji Wan was clearly recorded. The information described in this information was 90% the same as what Leng Shiqi had experienced. The only thing not recorded in the information was Zhu Huarong's fake death and Leng Shiqi's secret acquisition of the red gold earth dragon flame. From this, it could be seen that the Wind Tower's ability to gather information was appalling. Lei Mayan put down the information, sighed softly, and said, "He was able to kill the early stage of the Gang Spirit Realm at the middle stage of the Spirit Aperture Realm, and he destroyed the extreme volcano village in just over a month. This Lu Xingji is really a talent with endless potential. The Dark Thunder Guards have picked up a good seedling." Eunuch Gao, who had always been cold and serious, also raised a few smiles. "This boy is really good, but he still needs more training." Eunuch Gao is still so strict. "So, which people in this group do you think can enter the next round?" Lei Mayan asked with a smile. Eunuch Gao did not answer directly, but looked through the information again. Lei Mayan was not in a hurry, so she waited calmly. After a while, Eunuch Gao said, "I have 7 candidates in mind. Princess, why don't you take a guess?" Hearing this, Lei Mayan suddenly raised her eyebrows. This zombie-faced Eunuch Gao was joking with her? This was really strange. It seemed that he was really in a good mood. She rolled her eyes and smiled charmingly. "What a coincidence. I also have 7 candidates here. Why don't we write down the names of these 7 people and see if they are the same? Bring a pen and paper." Soon after, the two each took a piece of paper and exchanged it. When they saw the names written by each other, they looked at each other and smiled. Lei Mayan covered her mouth and smiled. Sure enough, great minds think alike. Just as they were talking, Donglin City's Lord Fengluan walked in. He first bowed and said, "Sirs, Lu Xingji and the others have returned. They came back quite quickly. Call them in according to the names on this list. As for the others, you can go back." Lei Mayan picked up the paper and said. Fengluan took it with both hands, then bowed and left. There were 23 people standing outside the hall, with Leng Shiqi leading the group. Fengluan immediately said, "You are the first to complete the mission. First, I have to congratulate you. But you also know that completing the mission does not mean you can pass the test." Speaking of this, most of the people in the crowd held their breath. If they passed this time, they would definitely have a meteoric rise in the future. If they failed, they could only go back home. Feng Luan took out the paper, and everyone's eyes were immediately attracted. He coughed and said, "Leng Shiqi." Leng Shiqi stepped forward and cupped his fists. "Thank you, Lord." "Don't thank me. You fought for it yourself. The two sirs are waiting inside. You can go in first." Feng Luan looked at Leng Shiqi with appreciation. Everyone took it for granted that Leng Shiqi could pass the test. No one had any complaints. Feng Luan continued to read the names: Dichuan, Dongfengqi, Buyangqiu, Higawi, Yin Xiefeng, and Blood Moon. Chapter 451. Other than Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi, the rest of the 7 people that Feng Luan pointed out were all in the late stage of the spirit aperture realm. They naturally had no complaints about Leng Shiqi, but Delta Origi, who was only in the early stage of the spirit aperture realm, could also pass the test, which made them feel a little unfair. Although she had killed 2 early-stage spirit aperture realm opponents, which proved that she was not weak. But in the end, she was still in the early stage of the spirit aperture realm, and did not have a decisive performance in the entire mission. Why did she pass? The others felt unfair, but no one jumped out to question Feng Luan, because none of them were idiots. They knew that the decision was not made by Feng Luan, but by Eunuch Gao and Lei Mayan. Since the two had made such a decision, of course, it was impossible to change it. And none of them dared to argue with Eunuch Gao or Lei Mayan, unless they were crazy. Leng Shiqi roughly knew why Delta Origi was selected. Although everyone's mission was to destroy the extreme volcano village, taking all the resources of the bipolar mountain village was not a small contribution. Because of this, the bipolar mountain village was basically crippled. For a short period of time, they could only seek self-preservation, and could not come out to cause trouble. This time, the elites would be placed in Donglin County, and they even made a move against the spirit cultivator sections. This was a signal. It was a signal that the Thunderblaze dynasty wanted to completely control Donglin County in their hands. Anything that could suppress the spirit cultivator forces in Donglin County could be regarded as a contribution. And the matter of seizing the resources of the bipolar mountain village was led by Delta Origi, which was why she passed the test. Then Leng Shiqi, Delta Origi, and the rest of the 7 people stepped into the hall and saluted. "Greetings to Manager Gao, greetings to Enforcer Lei." "You guys very good," Lei Mayan said. "We already know everything. The 7 of you have the most outstanding performance in this mission, so you can enter the next round." Next round? Hearing this, Dongfengqi and the rest were stunned. Didn't they get to enter the dragon vein to cultivate after passing the test? Why was there a next round? Only Leng Shiqi secretly thought that his previous investment was right. What? Do you think that so many people are qualified to enter the dragon vein, just because they destroyed a mere extreme fire manor? Lei Mayan sneered. However, she changed the topic. Of course, there are also rewards for passing the first round. Lei Mayan gave Feng Luan a meaningful glance. He immediately stepped forward and took out 7 items. Each item was wrapped in a layer of faint spiritual light. Taking a closer look, there were spirit tools, cultivation methods, spirit skills, pills, materials, and so on. Furthermore, these items were all at the 6th grade. For a spirit aperture realm cultivator, there were very few people who could possess a 6th level treasure. For example, in their group, only Leng Shiqi and Dichuan had 6th level spiritual tools. This was enough to make others envious. Feng Luan pointed to the 7 items and said, "These are your rewards. Choose according to the order of the list just now. Leng Shiqi, you are the first." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi took 2 steps forward. His gaze swept across the 7 items. He first eliminated materials and spirit tools. He had no use for materials now, and he didn't lack spirit tools. He still had to choose between cultivation methods and spirit skills. Regardless of whether it was a 6th level cultivation method or spirit skill, they were both precious resources that could only be encountered but not sought. Furthermore, these 2 resources were very important to Leng Shiqi. Spirit skills were, needless to say, they were the foundation of his existence. Cultivation methods were also something he urgently needed. Currently, The spirit apertures in his body were enough for him to directly cultivate to the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm. However, after that, there was still a long way to go. That was to open all 360 spirit apertures in his body. If he wanted to open the spirit apertures, he would need a lot of cultivation methods. Furthermore, they had to be at the 5th level at the very least. Therefore, he had to collect some cultivation methods above the 5th level in advance. The 6th level cultivation method in front of him, Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll, was very tempting to him, especially since he had absorbed the Wind and Thunder God's Luck Stone. There was still a lot of pure wind and thunder power in his body. Cultivating this cultivation method would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. The 6th level spirit skill Black Lotus Demonic Fist beside it was also very interesting. Generally speaking, fist techniques were mostly firm and fierce. However, this Black Lotus Demonic Fist did the opposite. With one punch, the Black Lotus Demonic Chi would enter the enemy's body. This Black Lotus Demonic Chi was extremely sinister. It could absorb the spirit chi in the body to strengthen itself. It was equivalent to a parasite. Moreover, it was very tough and difficult to get rid of. It could be said that once the Black Lotus Demonic Chi entered the body, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, regardless of whether it was Nirvana Remnant Wind Scroll or Black Lotus Demonic Fist, Lung Shiqi wanted both. Therefore, he deliberately walked around these items a few times. He stood in front of the cultivation method and spirit skill for a little while, as if he was having a hard time making a choice. The others didn't rush him. In fact, Lung Shiqi had already secretly used his unlimited skill points to learn both cultivation methods and spirit skills. Only a child would make a choice. Then Lung Shiqi took away the elixir among the 7 items. Dichuan immediately sighed softly. Obviously, he wanted this elixir. This elixir was called Crystallization Elixir. It was a necessary elixir to break through to Gang's spirit realm from Spirit Aperture Realm. In the 4 realms of celestial being, to enter Spirit Pulse Realm, one had to upgrade his Sea of Chi to Spirit Sea. To enter Spirit Aperture Realm, one had to rotate his Spirit Sea to form spiritual spirals. If one wanted to break through to Gang's spirit realm, one of the necessary conditions was to condense spiritual spirals into spiritual crystals. That was to change the spirit chi in the body qualitatively, and condense it into a material object. However, it was easier said than done. Li Xianyang, the head of Xianyang sect, betrayed the whole sect in order to break through to Gang's spirit realm. He just wanted to get the Yuanshi aperture crystal to help him condense spiritual crystals. It could be seen how difficult this step was. The crystallization elixir could greatly improve the success rate of condensing spiritual crystals. It could be said that the value of this elixir was no less than that of the Yuanshi aperture crystal. As long as one had the crystallization elixir, one would be half a step into Gang's spirit realm. Of course, the crystallization elixir could only increase one's confidence. As for whether one could successfully condense spiritual crystals, it still depended on one's own ability. Dichuan was now at the 9th level of Spirit Aperture Realm. His next step was to condense spiritual crystals. Therefore, he hoped to get the crystallization elixir the most. Unfortunately, Lung Shiqi beat him to it. After choosing, Lung Shiqi also noticed Dichuan's strangeness. His eyes flashed slightly, and he stood aside. Then it was Dichuan's turn. However, what he wanted most was gone. The destructive wind scroll was not suitable for him. He also had a 6th level spiritual sword, so he took the Black Lotus Demon Fist in the end. The rest of the people also chose what they wanted in order. In the end, only the 6th level materials were left for Delta Origi. However, Delta Origi did not care. The 6th level materials were also valuable. It was good to exchange them for other things. Chapter 452. The few of them received their respective rewards. Overall, they were very satisfied. Coupled with the resources that they had previously received, this alone made them feel that this trip was not in vain. Lei Mayan stood up and said, "You 7 are all the pillars of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. In the future, you will be the pillars of the Thunderfire Dynasty. We will be loyal to the Thunderfire Dynasty with all our strength." Lung Shiqi and others shouted at the same time. This time, You have successfully destroyed the extreme fire village. Of course, this is not the only reward. There is another reward for each of you. Leng Shiqi and others were all looking forward to it. Lei Mian paused deliberately and said, "That is an opportunity." They were stunned at first, but then they were all overjoyed. Except for Leng Shiqi, these people were all supervisors of the Dark Thunder Guards or commissioners of the Discipline Commission. When they broke through to the Gang Spirit Realm, they would have the opportunity to be promoted to the Great Supervisor or Great Commissioner. However, it was only an opportunity. After all, there must be more than one person who was qualified to be promoted. Besides, there were very few positions for the Great Supervisor or Great Commissioner. Some people could even sit in this position for decades until they retired. So even if they wanted to be promoted, they needed not only cultivation strength, but also opportunity. And Lei Mian gave them this opportunity. For example, Dichuan was very likely to be promoted to the Great Commissioner after he broke through to the Gang Spirit Realm. How could they not be happy? Thank you, Lightning Executioner. Their voices were clearly more fervent than before. Lei Mian chuckled and sat down again. Eunuch Gao continued, "The Extreme Fire Village has been destroyed. Then do you know why this sect was destroyed? This was a problem that had been bothering Leng Shiqi and the others. If the Great Righteousness Sect and the Salt Gang had a close relationship with the Mountain Sea Sect, then the Thunderblaze dynasty would be able to slowly pull out the fangs of the Mountain Sea Sect. But the Extreme Fire Village had nothing to do with the Mountain Sea Sect. Why was it on the blacklist of the Thunderfire dynasty?" They looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. Eunuch Gao sneered in a cold voice. "Humph, that's because the Extreme Fire Village was determined not to change. I won't hide it from you. Not long ago, a prince secretly contacted Extreme Fire Manor. So Extreme Fire Manor shouldn't exist anymore." After Eunuch Gao finished speaking, he did not say anything else. However, his words shocked Leng Shiqi and the others. Everyone who could stand here was a shrewd person. They instantly understood the meaning behind Eunuch Gao's words. The Extreme Fire Manor saw that the current emperor didn't have much time left, and decided to interfere in the succession. Leng Shiqi also felt that Zhu Horong was being too whimsical. Perhaps he thought that this was an opportunity, but he neglected the fact that His Majesty was still alive. Based on the intelligence network of the Dark Thunder Guards, they had quickly found out that the Extreme Fire Manor was related to the prince, which was tantamount to ignoring the current emperor. If that was the case, the only outcome that awaited the Extreme Fire Manor was destruction. At the same time, Leng Shiqi suddenly remembered that when Feng Shaimo led them to destroy the Golden Wing Academy, someone seemed to have mentioned that the Golden Wing Academy had something to do with a certain prince. He couldn't help but think that the person who hired the Blood Garment Pavilion back then was most likely someone from the Thunderblaze dynasty. Eunuch Gao's eyes suddenly became as sharp as an eagle's. His gaze swept across everyone, and everyone who was stared at felt a chill run down their spines. "Therefore, I hope that you won't meddle in other people's business. Do you understand?" Dongfang Qi and the others immediately nodded frantically and secretly wiped off the cold sweat on their foreheads. Leng Shiqi also understood that Eunuch Gao's actions were to warn them not to get involved in the succession. Otherwise, they would end up like the Extreme Fire Manor. Eunuch Gao's concerns were reasonable. Although the people present did not hold high positions, each of them had unlimited potential. The current emperor could at least hold on for a few more years. After a few years, these people could completely grow into the core power of the Thunderblaze dynasty. They were definitely worthy of being roped in by the various princes. Since you all understand, I can rest assured. Eunuch Gao then closed his eyes and seemed to be overwhelmed by sleepiness. Feng Luan spoke in a timely manner. You all completed the mission very quickly. Therefore, you have to wait for the other two groups to complete their missions before you can proceed to the next round. During this period of time, you can rest assured and stay in the City Lord's mansion. Speaking up to here, Feng Luan looked at Lei Mian and Eunuch Gao who were sitting high up. Seeing that they had no intention of speaking, he sent Leng Shiqi and the others away. However, just as Leng Shiqi was about to walk out of the hall, Eunuch Gao's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "I will come and find you at midnight." Leng Shiqi was secretly shocked. Thoughts flashed through his mind one after another. but he couldn't figure out why eunuch Gao would come and find him. However, he had already made contributions, so no matter what, it shouldn't be a bad thing. After Leng Shiqi parted with the others, he decided to take advantage of the fact that it was still early to sort out the resources he had on him. He had obtained a lot of resources from the Extreme Fire Manor and the Bipolar Mountain Stronghold. Even if it was divided equally among more than 20 people, it was still equivalent to the lifetime wealth of an ordinary Spirit Aperture Realm cultivator. He first sold all the resources that he didn't need to the system, and received more than 2,000 system coins. Including his original one, he already had more than 5,000 points. At first, before Leng Shiqi came to Donglin County, he had specially prepared 3,000 system coins for emergencies. Unfortunately, he hadn't used them yet. At this time, the system coins had increased by a lot, which made him want to draw a lottery. However, he still held back. Instead of relying on his luck, it was better to do something practical. For example, buy some experience pills for the Gu King. In the battle between Leng Shiqi and Ji1, he had also deeply experienced the strength of the Gu King, so he wanted to cultivate the Gu King as soon as possible. And experience pills were the fastest and most convenient way. Then Leng Shiqi opened the interface of the shop and chose the intermediate experience pills that were worth 300 system coins each. He directly bought 7 of them. Leng Shiqi's system coins instantly returned to more than 3,000, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of heartache. Instead, he summoned the Gu King and threw it an experience pill. The Gu King immediately flew around Leng Shiqi twice happily. Then, Leng Shiqi continued to sort out his resources. Of course, the most precious ones were the cultivation methods and spiritual skills. It was a pity that whether it was the cultivation methods or spiritual skills, the highest level was only the 4th level. The higher level ones should be in the minds of Zhu Huarong and Xiao Jingwu. Of course, Leng Shiqi didn't refuse them all and learned them all. This time, the spiritual skill library was expanded a lot, giving him more possibilities. In addition, the most precious ones were the awakening pills. Leng Shiqi had been in the 5th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm for a while. Now that he had settled down, he had plans to break through. He estimated that as long as he refined 3 awakening pills, it would be enough for him to break through to the 6th level of the Spirit Aperture Realm. Chapter 453. Leng Shiqi raised his head and swallowed an Acupore's awakening pill. Then he began cultivating. It wasn't until midnight that Leng Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes. Not far from him, a person had appeared without anyone noticing. It was Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao. While he was cultivating, he spared some of his attention to think about why Eunuch Gao had come to him. Eunuch Gao had come in the middle of the night. Obviously, there was something shameful going on. In the end, Leng Shiqi felt that Eunuch Gao was probably trying to recruit him. Now that he thought about it, Eunuch Gao had given him the Cold Nether Manual and a place in the elite association in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. Now that he had performed extremely well in the mission to destroy the Extreme Volcano Village, he was even more worthy of being recruited. Greetings, Supervisor Gao. Leng Shiqi immediately stood up and saluted. Eunuch Gao did not speak. He just rolled his eyes, and an extreme chill that seemed to come from the netherworld suddenly appeared. The Cold Nether Manual in Leng Shiqi's body began to operate on its own. Leng Shiqi was shocked, but he did not resist. Then Eunuch Gao nodded gently, and everything returned to normal. You really have practiced the Cold Nether Manual. Apart from that, you also have several cultivation methods. You are not simple, Eunuch Gao said in a hoarse voice. Thank you, Supervisor Gao. Leng Shiqi bowed his head and said respectfully. He did not directly explain why he had practiced so many cultivation methods at the same time. Eunuch Gao curled his lips and did not ask further. Since you have practiced my cultivation method, you can be considered half a disciple of mine. Before Eunuch Gao could continue, Leng Shiqi immediately bowed and shouted, Greetings, Master. Eunuch Gao had only said 2 sentences since he arrived. Leng Shiqi did not hear any malice in those 2 sentences, so he planned to ride on this big ship. Before coming to Donglin County, Yu Ruifeng's words reminded him that even if Leng Shiqi performed well in the elite meeting this time, he would still have to go back to Western Wilderness County in the future. Then at most he would be able to sit in the position of patrol inspector. It would be extremely difficult for him to be promoted. However, if he was only an inspector, it would be unrealistic for him to complete the Blood Seed plan smoothly. Therefore, he had to find a backer within the Dark Thunder Guards to prepare for the future, and Eunuch Gao was very suitable. Therefore Leng Shiqi wanted to give it a try. It would be great if he succeeded, but if he failed he wouldn't lose anything. Eunuch Gao's expression changed slightly. Then he laughed, and the wrinkles on his face trembled. Haha, you sure know how to climb up a pole. Interesting. Leng Shiqi flipped his hand, and took out a mustard seed bag. This is a small gift that disciple has prepared for Shizhuan. Please accept it. What he took out was almost all the resources he had on him. As long as he could really open a path to Eunuch Gao, any amount of resources would be worth it. Eunuch Gao waved his hand and said, "You are smart, but I can only accept you as a nominal disciple at most. Besides, how can I accept your things? On the contrary, I should give you a meeting gift." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi secretly thought that he had made the right bet. You have talent, ability, and skill. I like it very much. You can accept this. As he spoke, he took out a gray token. Leng Shiqi looked at it carefully. There was a mysterious pattern engraved on it, but he didn't find any clues. This is the Imperial Supervisor token. With this token, even the patrol inspector will have to be polite to you. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows. Imperial Supervisor token? According to Eunuch Gao, this thing could even make the patrol inspector afraid. This was equivalent to giving him a lot of power. This disciple thanks Master for the reward. Leng Shiqi immediately lowered his head and said respectfully. Eunuch Gao nodded with satisfaction. Lu Xingji, you are a smart person. I see your potential, so I believe you will give me what I want. Leng Shiqi knew very well that Eunuch Gao was trying to rope him in because he wanted his loyalty. In a few years, there would definitely be a turmoil in the Thunder Flame dynasty. At that time, no one knew which prince would ascend the throne. As the saying went, a new emperor brings new ministers. Eunuch Gao, as the head steward, might not be able to stay out of it. Therefore, he had to start cultivating his own followers. Thus, Leng Shiqi said solemnly, this subordinate will definitely be loyal to Eunuch Gao. Hearing this, Eunuch Gao smiled again. He was very satisfied with Leng Shiqi. Seeing that Leng Shiqi was so sensible, he was even happier. Since you and I are considered master and disciple, I can let you go through the back door. The next test you will undergo will be very interesting. Very interesting? Leng Shiqi wondered if he had heard wrong when Eunuch Gao described the next test like this. However, he didn't expect Eunuch Gao to ask a very strange question. How are your survival skills? Leng Shiqi was stunned for a moment before replying, it's all right. He had the ghostly spring steps, a movement technique that was both light and teleportation. It was very good whether it was chasing or escaping. Eunuch Gao revealed a meaningful smile and said, that's good. However, before the other two groups complete their missions, you should think about your survival skills. This sentence made Leng Shiqi's heart skip a beat. It sounded like the next test would be very dangerous. This made him a little bewildered. The elite council was still a selection of talents, so there had never been any deaths. Even if they went to destroy the extreme fire village, there was still a lot of danger. However, if you didn't want to take the risk, you could of course give up. However, you would definitely be eliminated. Moreover, those who could enter the next round were prodigies among prodigies. The Thunderflame dynasty was eager to nurture them. Why would they joke about their lives? However, Leng Shiqi saw that Eunuch Gao didn't seem to be joking. Alright, that's all I have to say. You should prepare well. After saying this, a faint cold aura surged out of his body. Then he silently left. Leng Shiqi was still carefully thinking about the meaning of Eunuch Gao's words. He then thought about how he didn't seem to have many survival skills other than the ghostly spring steps. This was because his fighting style was rather aggressive. He had always used offense as defense. His storm-like attacks could defeat his opponent in a short period of time. Therefore, he rarely used defensive spirit techniques. Looks like I have to use this time to get more defensive skills. Just as he was thinking to himself, a series of knocks came from outside and pulled his thoughts back. Brother Lu, I am Dichuan. It's very presumptuous of me to visit so late at night, but I have something to discuss with you. Please see me. Chapter 454. Leng Shiqi heard the voice outside and chuckled. Di Chuan's visit was within his expectations, so he gathered his thoughts and opened the door. Brother Di, please come in. After the two sat down, Di Chuan went straight to the point. Brother Lu, I won't hide it from you. I came here to make a deal with you. As soon as he opened his mouth, Leng Shiqi knew what he was going to say. Di Chuan wanted nothing more than the crystal formation pill, but he still deliberately asked, Brother Di, please speak. Brother Lu should know that my cultivation is already at the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm, and I'm not far from condensing a spirit crystal, so I really need a crystal formation pill. Di Chuan looked at Leng Shiqi's expression and saw that he was expressionless. Di Chuan understood and continued, I came here with sincerity. Brother Lu, please state your conditions. Leng Shiqi thought that it was as expected. Actually, Leng Shiqi didn't really need this pill. First of all, in terms of cultivation, he was still a long way from the peak of the spirit aperture realm. Even if he broke through to the 9th level of the spirit aperture realm, he wouldn't be in a hurry to condense a spirit crystal because he still needed to open up all the spirit apertures. If he really could open up all the 360 spirit apertures in his body, then condensing a spirit crystal wouldn't be a problem. Therefore, he could take out this crystal formation pill to trade. Since they were going to make a deal, Leng Shiqi obviously wanted cultivation methods and spirit techniques the most. However, Di Chuan definitely wouldn't hand them over so easily. Even if he was willing to take them out, they wouldn't be of high quality. Therefore, Leng Shiqi planned to see what Di Chuan could offer first. He directly took out the crystal formation pill from his mustard seed bracelet and placed it in his hand. Brother Di is really straightforward. I also need this crystal formation pill, but I don't need it urgently. If Brother Di wants it, of course you can take it. I just don't know what Brother Di wants to trade for it. Hearing that Leng Shiqi was willing to trade the crystal formation pill, Di Chuan's face immediately lit up. He hurriedly said, Brother Lu, please take a look. As he spoke, he took out a piece of paper with many cultivation resources listed on it. This is the largest amount of resources I can use. Brother Lu can choose whatever you want. Pick at will. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows slightly, but when he finished reading the list on the paper, his face sank again. He said with a displeased tone, Brother Di, forgive me for being blunt, but even if all these things are added together, they are still inferior to the crystal formation pill. Di Chuan also blushed. Brother Lu, this is all I have. If it's really not enough, can Brother Lu wait for a while? I will send a message to Ningyang County to transfer some resources over. Leng Shiqi shook his head, showing a hint of disappointment. Brother Di, you still don't understand. These resources are indeed a lot, but they are too ordinary and useless to me. Even if it was 10 times more, I wouldn't agree. Di Chuan also understood what Leng Shiqi meant. These resources were not precious enough, and their quality was too low. However, when Di Chuan came to participate in the elite meeting, he didn't bring anything too valuable. It was impossible for him to come all the way from Ningyang County in such a short time. Just as he was frowning, he clapped his hands and suddenly thought of something. Then he took out something similar to a finger bone. This thing was grayish-white, and didn't look like a human finger bone. Even if it was left motionless, there would be traces of gray qi lingering around it. As for Leng Shiqi, the moment he saw this thing, he could feel the evil aura from it. And it was a very familiar kind of evil qi. It was the same as the aura of the evil old man that Nine Leaf devoured in Qi City. Leng Shiqi was secretly surprised. He picked up the finger bone and looked at it carefully for a while, but he didn't see anything special about it. He only knew that this thing was definitely not simple. Di Chuan saw that Leng Shiqi seemed to be interested in this thing, so he smiled. Brother Lu, I got this thing by chance on my way from Ningyang County to Donglin Town. I have asked several treasure appraisers to appraise it. They all said that this thing is at least a 6th level treasure, but they can't see how to use it. If you like it, all the resources on the list and this finger bone will belong to you. What do you think? Leng Shiqi began to ponder. After a long while, Di Chuan became more and more anxious. Leng Shiqi said, I'll take this finger bone, but I don't want the things on the list. Hearing this, Di Chuan frowned secretly. Leng Shiqi must have other motives for not wanting the resources. He asked in a low voice. What do you want, Brother Lu? Leng Shiqi chuckled. I want Brother Di to stand on my side. As Leng Shiqi spoke, he looked directly at Di Chuan. Di Chuan quickly reacted. They were all going to enter the next round of the test. No matter who passed the test in the other two groups, they must all be outstanding. Then it was hard to say who would be the leader in the next round. After all, both Wu Diao and Zhuge Puha were strong competitors. So if Leng Shiqi wanted to continue to be the leader, he had to start winning people's hearts. Di Chuan only hesitated a little, and then agreed at once. Not to mention the problem of resources, Leng Shiqi's terrible record of killing masters in Gang Spirit Realm was enough to make Di Chuan bow his head. He nodded and said, Brother Lu, don't worry. I will definitely support you in the next round. Thank you, Brother Di. This crystallization pill is a thank you gift. Leng Shiqi handed over the crystallization pill in his hand. Di Chuan's face lit up with joy. After a few polite words, Di Chuan left happily. Leng Shiqi was still sitting in the chair. After a while, he glanced at a corner of the room and said coldly, How long do you want to hide? However, there was nothing there. Leng Shiqi snorted and flicked out a sword chi of 3 ju. A black flame suddenly rose in that place, and a slim figure appeared. It was Lian Yi. In fact, Lian Yi had sneaked in when Di Chuan pushed the door open and left. It had to be said that her sneaking was very clever. Even Di Chuan, who was a whole realm higher than her, did not notice her. That was to say, Leng Shiqi's spiritual force was very strong, so he felt a trace of strange fluctuation. Lian Yi still wore the black veil on her face, but there was a trace of a smile in her eyes. Mr. Lu is really sensitive. Leng Shiqi looked straight at Lian Yi. In his opinion, since Lian Yi could participate in the elite meeting with the cultivation of the late stage of spiritual pulse realm, she must have a great background. Lian Yi was very low-key in this task, or there was nothing for her to do, so she did not enter the next round. But then again, Lian Yi should be ready to leave Donglin County at this time. Why did she come here in the middle of the night? Leng Shiqi asked directly. If you have something to say it. The smile in Lian Yi's eyes deepened. She said, Should I call you Lu Xingji or Zhuqiu? Chapter 455. When Leng Shiqi heard the name, Zhuqiu from Lian Yi, he was shocked. He had used this identity to enter the illusory spirit secret realm, and fought with Lian Yi. However, Lian Yi's memory should have been tampered with by Meng Tianzong. How did she recognize him now? However, on second thought, Leng Shiqi realized that Lian Yi's memories should have been tampered with before she entered the alternate dimension of the Divine Dream Palace. Therefore, the memories of their initial battle still existed. Perhaps she had recognized him as Zhuqiu from some clues. Although Leng Shiqi was shocked, he still maintained a calm expression. He said indifferently, If Miss Lian Yi is here to say these strange things to me, please leave. Lian Yi acted as if she did not hear Leng Shiqi's words and continued. Actually, I came to the elite gathering purely to join in the fun. However, the moment I saw you, I felt a sense of déjà vu from you. However, I am certain that I have never seen you before. This has puzzled me, so I began to observe you. I have been observing you all this time. When you fought with Di Chuan and Ji Wen, even though your cultivation methods and spirit techniques were very different from before, there were still traces that could be traced, and there was still a sense of familiarity between your moves. I remember when I left the illusory spirit secret realm, I knew that you and Ozu had obtained the Divine Illusion Palace's legacy cultivation method. I specially went to look through the secrets of the Divine Illusion Palace. In the end, I found that the spirit technique you used when fighting with Ji Wen was very similar to the 5 God flowing light technique recorded in the secret records. You can't be Ozu, so you are Zhuqiu. Leng Shiqi was truly shocked that Lian Yi could accurately identify the 5 God flowing light technique. This cultivation method was passed down from 10,000 years ago. Where did Lian Yi find the secret records of the Divine Illusion Palace to be so detailed? She even knew the cultivation method and spirit techniques, like the back of her hand. Lian Ye's identity made Leng Shiqi even more surprised and curious. Since he had been recognized, Leng Shiqi no longer hid it. He said straightforwardly, "State your conditions." The condition he spoke of was naturally the condition for Lian Yi to keep his secret. Unexpectedly, Lian Yi shook her head and said, "I don't have any conditions. I just want you to answer a few of my questions truthfully." Lian Ye's actions made Leng Shiqi feel even more troubled. He said, "Ask away." Lian Yi sat opposite Leng Shiqi. She stared at Leng Shiqi with her black gem-like eyes and said, "I know you're not Swordsmanship either. That Swordsmanship is just an ordinary rogue cultivator. How could he reach the middle stage of Spirit Aperture Realm in 2 years, and have the power to kill Gang Spirit Realm Masters? Therefore Lu Xingji is your original identity, right? According to what I know, you are the disciple of Chu Hajing, a loose cultivator at the unity of heaven and man realm. He was also the one who pulled strings to stuff you into the Dark Thunder Guards. After that, you used your Spirit Pulse realm cultivation to quickly eliminate dissidents and secure your position as supervisor. After that, you single-handedly destroyed a third-rate sect, the Profound Yang sect. Then you went on a diplomatic mission to Zhulu country. Coincidentally, Zhulu country went through a great change. When you returned, you were already at the Spirit Aperture Realm and had been promoted to Great Supervisor. It can be said that you are full of surprises and inconceivable. Therefore, I'm very curious, who are you? At the end, Lian Ye's eyes became somewhat cold. On the other hand, the more Leng Shiqi listened, the more shocked he became. Lian Yi had actually investigated him from beginning to end. Moreover, Lian Yi had been carrying out missions with him all this time. How did she find out? This Lian Yi can not only get detailed information about the Divine Illusion Palace from 10,000 years ago, but she can also find information about the West Baron Prefecture, and even Zhulu country. In the Dark Thunder Guards, even the famous inspector might not have this kind of authority, right? Just who is she? Leng Shiqi thought to himself. At the same time, killing intent appeared in his heart. However, this killing intent was instantly dispelled by him. Lian Ye's identity indeed made him a bit cautious. Even if he wanted to kill her, he couldn't do it here. Therefore he said, "Just as you said, you have already investigated my identity. You already know who I am, so why are you still asking me?" Lian Yi didn't seem to be satisfied with this answer. She said in a cold voice, "There is indeed no problem with your background. However, the problem is that before you appeared in the illusory spirit secret realm, there was nothing special about you. However, since the illusory spirit secret realm, your opportunities, cultivation, and strength have all increased at an unimaginable rate. I'm not boasting, but even in the entire Thunderflame dynasty, those who can cultivate to the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm at my age can be counted on one hand. However, you, in less than 2 years, jumped from the early stage of the Spirit Pulse realm to the middle stage of the Spirit Aperture realm. Your identity also changed from a rank 1 rogue cultivator to a supervisor of the Dark Thunder Guards. This kind of change was simply appalling. It's as if you've become a completely different person." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi laughed involuntarily. "These things may seem inconceivable to you, but everything I have today was exchanged with my life. You haven't experienced what despair is, you haven't stepped into the abyss. If you had experienced life and death several times, I think you wouldn't have come to question me." Lian Ye's eyes changed slightly. She stared blankly for a moment before saying, "What you said may be reasonable, but you are still very suspicious." Leng Shiqi finally understood. It seemed that Lian Yi hadn't reported her suspicions of him yet. She only came tonight to ask about it. This made him feel a bit more at ease. He replied, "I think you're thinking too much. My actions in the Western Desolate Province were all under the eyes of Supervisor Yu Ruifeng. Moreover, it was he who brought me to Zhulugua. However, there are some secrets that you don't know. If you really can't, you can ask Sir Yu what happened in Zhulugua. Moreover, it was Eunuch Gao who allowed me to participate in the elite meeting. You can not believe me, but you can't not believe Sir Yu and Eunuch Gao, right? Could it be that I can control them?" He brought up Supervisor Yu Ruifeng and Eunuch Gao, one of the 4 supervisors of the Dark Thunder Guards. This made Lian Yi start to waver. She thought to herself, Could it be that I really missed some crucial information? This won't do. When I go back, I have to carefully investigate. This Lu Xingji is too outstanding. He will most likely be transferred to the headquarters in the future. He can't be unclean at all. Leng Shiqi saw that she didn't speak and struck while the iron was hot. He flipped his hand and a ball of cold underworld energy condensed in his palm. With your knowledge, you should be able to see what this is. This is cold underworld energy. You cultivate the cold underworld scripture. Lianyi exclaimed in a low voice. At the same time, she looked at Leng Shiqi with a strange gaze. Chapter 456. Leng Shiqi admitted, "That's right. This is the cold nether scripture. Eunuch Gao has already passed it to me. This means that I'm definitely trustworthy." Lianyi was both surprised and puzzled when she saw Leng Shiqi use the cold nether scripture. She knew about the cold nether scripture. It was a cultivation technique created by Eunuch Gao. However, she had the impression that only Eunuch Gao's adopted sons cultivated this cultivation technique. Could it be that Lu Xingji is a... Lianyi sized up Leng Shiqi, causing him to feel cold all over. However, most of the suspicion in her heart had been dispelled. She had some understanding of Eunuch Gao. If Leng Shiqi's background wasn't clean, then Eunuch Gao would definitely not pass the cultivation technique to Leng Shiqi. Eunuch Gao's actions not only proved that Leng Shiqi's background was clean, it also meant that he wanted to nurture Leng Shiqi as a trusted aide. Lianyi lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Since that's the case, then I'll take it that I've wronged you. However, the matter of you attacking me in the illusory spirit secret realm isn't over. This. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but be stunned. If he remembered correctly, it was clearly Lianyi who attacked him first in the illusory spirit secret realm. Why was it the other way around now? However, Leng Shiqi became vigilant when Lianyi mentioned the illusory spirit secret realm. After all, there were very few people who knew that he was Zhuochuyu, the person who obtained the inheritance of the Divine Illusion Palace's cultivation technique. If Lianyi were to leak this news, it would definitely bring him endless trouble. Miss Lianyi, you secretly investigated me for the sake of the Dark Lightning Guards, so I don't mind. However, I hope that Miss Lianyi won't leak the fact that I once used the identity of Zhuochuyu. Of course. What Leng Shiqi did not expect was that Lianyi would actually agree immediately. However, in the end she rolled her eyes and said, "But I have a condition." When he heard the word condition, Leng Shiqi felt even more assured. If Lianyi didn't mention anything, then he would think too much. Speak your mind. If you come to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters in the future, help me do something. Lianyi put forward her condition. However, this condition caused Leng Shiqi to frown. This kind of condition was the most troublesome. He asked in return, "Miss Lianyi is so confident that I will be transferred to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters?" Lianyi chuckled. Eunuch Gao even passed on the cultivation method to you. Wouldn't it be a matter of time before you were transferred to headquarters? Don't worry, the things I ask you to do will definitely be within the scope of your ability, and you will be compensated accordingly. Leng Shiqi hesitated for a moment. He could imagine that what Lianyi wanted him to do was related to the internal strife of the Dark Thunder Guard. However, he was already on Eunuch Gao's side. If he agreed now, how would he explain himself to Eunuch Gao in the future? Seeing that Leng Shiqi was still hesitating, Lianyi continued, "Don't think too much about it. That matter is my personal matter, but I can't tell you right now." Private matters? Then there was no problem. Helping her with a private matter could eliminate countless troubles. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. Thus Leng Shiqi said, "This one will listen to Miss Lianyi's orders. However, if Miss Lianyi's request is too excessive, then forgive this one for going back on his word." "Okay, I believe Brother Lu won't go back on his word. It's late, this one will take her leave first." After Lianyi finished speaking, she turned into a black shadow and left. Leng Shiqi looked at Lianyi's departing figure with a cold glint in his eyes. Today's Lianyi was much more mature and shrewd than before. However, it was still not deep enough. Fortunately, it was not deep enough. Leng Shiqi brought out Eunuch Gao to wash away his suspicions, but there was a flaw in it. He made Lianyi subconsciously think that eunuch Gao knew everything about him. In reality, eunuch Gao did not know that he had entered the illusory spirit secret realm with a fake identity in the celestial layer. Lianyi was still a bit naive. Leng Shiqi secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Tonight, 3 people had come to find him in succession. Among them, he had known about the arrival of eunuch Gao and Dichuan in advance. However, Lianye's appearance had really given him a wake-up call. Regardless of Lianye's identity, since she could investigate him so thoroughly, then there must be someone else in the Dark Thunder Guards who could find out. The reason why Lianyi was able to confirm that he was Zhuoqiuyu was because she recognized that the rotating ice and fire-flowing light array came from the 5 God-flowing light art. It seems that I can't use any spiritual skills related to the 5 God-flowing light art so easily. It's best if I can fuse these spiritual skills again and change them. Leng Shiqi secretly made up his mind. Then, he used the soul-splitting technique to split half of his consciousness into the illusory spirit world, and began to deduce and fuse the spiritual skills. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The other 2 groups that had destroyed the Great Righteousness Sect and the Salt Clan had also completed their missions. The destruction of these 2 sects had once again caused an earthquake in Donglin County. Although the destruction of the Extreme Fire Manor had attracted the attention of many people, it was still the Twin Pole Mountain stronghold that had destroyed it. There was a deep hatred between the 2 sides. Sooner or later, there would be a battle between the 2, so everyone discussed it for a while. However, in the short span of a month, the second-rate Great Righteousness Sect and the Salt Clan had been destroyed one after another. 3 second-rate sects had ceased to exist in a row. This kind of thing had never happened in Donglin County. Even in the entire Thunderfire dynasty, there was no precedent like this. This instantly made everyone feel that a storm was coming. One had to know that these 2 sects were not just second-rate forces. They could be said to be the Mountain Sea sect's pawn, and the Mountain Sea sect's money bag. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that someone was targeting the Mountain Sea sect. However, the Mountain Sea sect was a top force on the world's ranking of sects and dominated Donglin County. Who would dare to target the Mountain Sea sect? Who would have the ability to target the Mountain Sea sect? Moreover, many people had received information that these 3 destroyed forces had a large number of mysterious Spirit Aperture Realm experts participating. When did so many Spirit Aperture Realm experts appear in Donglin County? Connecting all these together, some people guessed that this was very likely the Thunderfire dynasty's doing. The dynasty wanted to suppress the Mountain Sea sect and take back the hegemony of Donglin County. As the news spread, all the spirit cultivator sects in Donglin County were suddenly in danger. If this guess was true, then the dynasty and the Mountain Sea sect would definitely fight. At that time, they might also be implicated. Weren't the Great Righteousness Sect and the Salt Clan the best examples? At this time, in the main hall of the Donglin City's City Lord's mansion, there were about 20 people gathered. These people were the instigators of the destruction of the 3 forces, and they were the best among them. Other than eunuch Gao and Lei Mayan who sat at the top, the others were clearly divided into 3 groups. They were respectively led by Leng Shiqi, Wu Diao, and Zhuge Puha. However, the number of people in these 3 groups was different. Leng Shiqi had a total of 7 people, which was the group with the largest number of people. Wu Diao had 6 people, and Zhuge Puha only had 5. At this moment, they were all standing with their hands behind their backs, looking respectful. Lei Mayan looked at the 18 people with a smile on her face. The 18 of you can be called the elites of the elites. Now, I will tell you the next round of the mission. Everyone's expression became serious. The first round of the test was to destroy a second-rate force, so the second round would definitely be more difficult. Chapter 457. Lei Mayan retracted her smile. She stretched out her jade-like arm, and bracelets flew out from it. The bracelets suddenly split into 5 different colored halos. She continuously formed seals, and the 5 bracelets instantly blossomed with radiance. Once again, they gradually overlapped with each other, forming a dusky light door. This is the minor 5 elements chaos paradise. There is a small space inside. Your test is inside, and your mission is to come out of the minor 5 elements chaos paradise alive. As soon as she said this, everyone's expression froze. Coming out alive was considered to have completed the mission? That meant that there was definitely danger inside that could threaten their lives. Of course, none of these people had any thoughts of wavering, and none of them were willing to withdraw, because they knew that if they really passed the test, what awaited them would definitely be soaring into the sky. Not only could they enter the dragon vein to cultivate, their future path of advancement would be smooth. Under this kind of strong pressure, everyone became even more motivated. Lei Mayan flicked her finger, and instantly, more than a dozen streams of light hit everyone's body. Lung Shiqi lowered his head to look, and a small blue token appeared in his hand. Coming out alive is the most basic requirement. Everyone has one of these tokens, and you can compete with each other without any restrictions. In addition, there are also some strange creatures in the paradise. Killing them can give you soul stones. 1 kilogram of soul stones can be exchanged for a token. After you come out, the 5 people with the most tokens will be considered to have passed the test. Everyone present looked at each other with hostility in their eyes. In the end, only 5 out of the 18 of them could pass the test. Moreover, they could snatch the tokens from each other. This was to let them kill each other. At this moment, everyone standing here was an enemy. Perhaps in this minor 5 elements chaos paradise, the most dangerous thing was not the strange creatures, but these people. Alright, the minor 5 elements chaos paradise can only be maintained for 7 days at most. Hurry up and go in. As for how to come out, you can think of a way yourselves. At this point, Lei Mayan waved her hand, and everyone walked into the gray door of light one by one. As soon as he walked through the door, Lung Shiqi felt as if the world around him had turned upside down. However, he was still very calm. He had experienced this kind of situation many times, and was starting to get used to it. When his eyes were able to see, all he could see was a thick layer of yellow sand. As far as the eye could see, this place seemed like a desert, and there was no one around him. Lung Shiqi muttered to himself. It seems that everyone has been separated. He looked around and found that the surrounding environment was almost exactly the same. There was not a single point of reference. Under such circumstances, even if he walked in a certain direction, he would unknowingly deviate from it. Moreover, he didn't know where to go. As Lung Shiqi pondered, an idea flashed through his mind. He immediately opened the system map. Previously, he had spent a total of 10,000 system coins to obtain a full map. However, he did not know if the system map would be of any use in this mini-chaos paradise. When he opened the system map, he saw that the map immediately showed 6 areas of different colors. The system map was actually effective. Lung Shiqi could not help but be delighted. He remembered that when he was at Gushan Peak, and was pulled into that small space by Tu Deng, the system map was not of any use. He could not help but sigh. That 10,000 system coins was really worth it. He immediately began to carefully study the map of this paradise. First, there were 5 areas of different colors that were distributed in a pentagon shape. He was currently in the yellow area, at the bottom right corner. He was not very far from the red area. These 5 regions should represent the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, and I'm in the earth region. It's a pity that this map can't show other people's locations. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi suddenly froze. Since the system map could be used, then the fate skill should be able to be used as well. As long as he activated the fate skill, he would be able to quickly find the others. Just as Lung Shiqi was about to activate the skill, the yellow sand under his feet suddenly shone with a strange rhythm. Immediately, Lung Shiqi suddenly knelt down. He actually felt as if his body was suddenly pressed down by a mountain, making it impossible for him to get up. His face was red, and layers of sweat instantly seeped out of his face. Even the blood in his body began to drop, and his meridians and bones emitted a slight friction sound. Lung Shiqi exclaimed in his heart, the gravity has increased. What surprised him the most was that the strength of his body was not weak. He had never forgotten to temper his body, and now, with just the strength of his body, he was comparable to a spirit cultivator in the early or middle stages of the spirit pulse stage. Even so, he was still pressed down by the invisible gravity to the point that he could not breathe. One could imagine how strong the gravity was. Lung Shiqi's mind moved, and black and red demonic chi surged as the demonic beast blood rune armor attached to his body, reducing the pressure on him by a lot. He could finally stand up with difficulty. However, he was still worried. He had a strong body and the demonic beast blood rune armor, so he could only stand with difficulty. What about the others? Wouldn't they be pressed to the ground and unable to move? What worried him was that in this situation, if the strange creature that Lei Mayan spoke of appeared, what should he do? If he couldn't even move, wouldn't that be the same as sending himself to death? Rustle, rustle, rustle. Suddenly, rustling sounds came from the surroundings, and then small mounds emerged from the yellow sand on the ground, as if something was about to come out. The corner of Lung Shiqi's mouth twitched. He didn't expect that he had the potential to jinx it. He hurriedly lifted his foot, but found that even lifting it a little was extremely difficult. Immediately, his entire body overflowed with demonic chi and gathered at his feet. He used the Netherworld Ghost Steps. The Netherworld Ghost Steps that could originally be as fast as a ghost could only allow him to run at the speed of a normal mortal. But in the blink of an eye, the small mounds around him finally broke out of the ground. Looking closely, they were monsters that seemed to be formed from small stones. These monsters were not big, only as tall as a person, but they did not have legs. They floated in the air, and with a casual movement, they could float more than 10 feet away. Seeing this scene, Lung Shiqi's heart was bitter beyond words. He remembered that night when Eunuch Gao had asked him about his ability to escape and survive. At that time he was still a little confident. But now, it seemed that he had overestimated himself. Because even if he used his fastest speed, it was far from being able to compare to these stone monsters. Lung Shiqi took a deep breath, and his eyes flashed with a dense killing intent. Since he could not escape, then he would kill them all. Chapter 458. Lung Shiqi took out the Devil Advent battle saber, but the arm that was holding the saber's hilt suddenly dropped. He frowned and put away the demon arrival battle blade. It was already very difficult for him to move, and using a spiritual weapon here was a burden. Then Lung Shiqi pointed his index finger, and a blood-red lightning shot through the air. The thunderclap blood heavenly finger was supposed to be as fast as lightning, but now it was affected by gravity, and its speed was much slower. Fortunately, the stone monsters did not seem to have much intelligence, and the thunderclap blood heavenly finger still hit one of them. The blood-red lightning instantly poked a large hole in the stone monster's body, but the stone monster did not feel anything and continued to stick close to him as if nothing had happened. Lung Shiqi used his fingers as a sword, and with a shake of his arm, dozens of tri-extinction sword chi were released in an instant, enveloping all the stone monsters around him. With a series of clanking sounds, the stone monsters were scattered by the tri-extinction sword chi, but most of them stood up shakily. Lung Shiqi's expression became more and more serious. These monsters did not have much intelligence, and their defense was not very strong, but they were very difficult to kill. If he did not specifically cultivate a body tempering technique, he would be tortured to death by these monsters sooner or later. I can't fight them here, and the demonic beast blood rune armor can't be maintained for too long. I should leave this place first. Lung Shiqi changed his plan. He raised his hand, and a few fingernail-sized black crystals flew out from the fragments of the monsters he had killed. These were the soul stones that Lei Mayan had mentioned. Then a large amount of cold air rose from his feet, and this cold air spread out like a wave, freezing all the stone monsters nearby. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he quickly activated the Fate skill, and the system map immediately appeared and began to enlarge. Lung Shiqi stared at the map, and there were indeed more than 10 figures on it. After 2 breaths, he found the location of the Delta Origi. However, his pupils suddenly shrank, and then he disappeared in the red, blue, and yellow light. At this moment in the wood region, this place was like a deep and serene forest. The only thing that stood out from the rest was that it was a withered forest. Although there were countless trees and all kinds of plants that he had never seen before, these plants were all withered and looked like they were about to die. And at this time, 2 people were fighting. One of them was dressed in a green robe that covered his face. Only a pair of cold eyes that were filled with killing intent could be seen. His cultivation was at the 7th level of Gang Spirit Realm. With a wave of his hand, all the plants nearby were controlled at will as if they were his arms. It seemed that he was a spiritual caster of wood. The other person was the Delta Origi. At this moment, Delta Origi was completely at a disadvantage. The green-robed man's cultivation was far above hers, and in this unique environment, Delta Origi was already struggling. The green-robed man said with a cold expression, "A mere early-stage spirit aperture realm cultivator can enter this place. However, I happened to meet you, so I picked up a token for free. Little girl, hand over the token obediently. This place is constantly absorbing our spiritual energy. You will be defeated sooner or later. Give me the token now, and you may be able to save your life." Delta Origi did not answer because she had already seen the killing intent in the green-robed man's eyes. Therefore, even if she handed over the token, the green-robed man would still not let her go. Delta Origi immediately forced out more than 10 drops of blood essence from her fingers. Her face instantly turned pale, and the blood essence condensed into 3 sparkling bloodlines, and then attached to her autumn water-like long sword. The spiritual sword turned into a blood sword in the blink of an eye. Delta Origi was going to fight with all her might. However, Delta Origi's expression was normal. Whether it was on the Blood Fog Island or in the Blood Prison, she had fought with all her might too many times. When the green-robed man saw this, the smile on his face disappeared. He actually felt a trace of danger from Delta Origi's body. A person who had just entered the Spirit Aperture Realm was actually a threat to him, a 7th-level Spirit Aperture Realm cultivator. The green-robed man's hand seals flew, and the 2 towering trees beside him were uprooted, turning into 2 huge beasts that attacked from both sides. Delta Origi's blood sword trembled, and a layer of ghost fire ignited on it. Soon after, a blood-colored sword slashed out like a waterfall. The sword slashed on the huge trees, and immediately tore open terrifying scars one after another, but the huge trees did not feel the slightest bit. Every branch on the huge trees turned into sharp spears and long swords, ruthlessly stabbing towards Delta Origi, completely trapping her in a sinister cage. At this moment, the green-robed man could be considered to have forced Delta Origi into a desperate situation. She also had some explosive and escape methods, but once she used them, there was a possibility that her true identity would be exposed. But if she didn't use them, she might really die here. Just as Delta Origi was about to use her trump card, a beam of red, blue, and yellow light suddenly appeared, and a figure wearing demonic armor walked out from the light. Delta Origi and the green-robed man's gaze immediately turned towards him. To be able to appear in such a manner, he was undoubtedly an expert. However, the green-robed man did not know if this person was a participant of the elite meeting, or a monster that originally existed in this world. However, in the next moment, that person actually staggered a few steps forward, and almost fell to the ground. A stunned expression immediately appeared on the green-robed man's face. What kind of situation was this? Delta Origi also recognized that this person was Lung Shiqi. She once saw Lung Shiqi wearing this demonic armor when he fought against the disciples of Lioha spiritual region. Of course, Lung Shiqi was directly teleported over using the Fate skill. However, when he suddenly went from the gravity space of the Earth region to a normal space, his body was not used to it, so he almost fell. After he steadied himself, his pair of green-white eyes looked towards the green-robed man, and his eyes emitted undisguised killing intent. The green-robed man could not figure out Lung Shiqi for a moment. Just as he was about to test him, Lung Shiqi moved first. Lung Shiqi raised his hands to the sky, and a burst of dazzling light suddenly appeared. In an instant, a blazing sun with blazing green flames condensed into a blazing sun. The green-robed man's expression changed, and his hand seals changed, intending to order the 2 giant trees to attack Lung Shiqi. Unfortunately, at this moment, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. He only saw 5 tall giants that looked like gods appear in front of him, making him want to kneel at their feet. He even completely forgot what he was doing. At the same time, Delta Origi used her sword technique, and a blood-colored crescent moon rose behind her. The poison sun shone brightly, and the blood moon was eerie. Under the sun and moon shining together, the 2 giant tree monsters were crushed one after another, And then the green-robed man who was distracted for a moment lost his life. The green-robed man, who was so arrogant just a moment ago, was instantly killed by the two of them. With the green-robed man dead, Delta Orgi finally breathed a sigh of relief. She nodded to Leng Shiqi, and then swallowed a pill to recover her spiritual energy. However, her face was still very pale. The pill could help her quickly recover her spiritual energy, but the blood she lost could only be slowly recovered. Leng Shiqi skillfully hooked the green-robed man's mustard seed bag, and secretly absorbed his remnant soul. At this time, Delta Orgi walked over, panting, and lifted the green-robed man's hood with the tip of her sword. Who is this person? It seems to be Zhugepu's team. Leng Shiqi shrugged. A dead person's name, don't worry about it. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.